Welcome. I am your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOTN. Joining me is Cody Saftik. You guys can catch him at CJ Saftik on Twitter. And we are propping you up for the last event, or the last UFC event of the year, headlined by Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and Geoff. Neal. Should be a great welterweight fight. Cody, what's going on, dude?
Yeah, you know what? I'm really glad to be doing these prop shows. When we first started them, I was like, oh, that's a cool idea. It's almost like a side attraction to making full card picks. But at the same time, like, yeah, you can find some value in the props. Last week was the key of why like props can save you, man, because as far as the money line goes, like I was way off, but being able to at least hit a lot of those overs in the main event, Surreal Gang hitting that over by like what, 3 seconds?
4 seconds.
Yeah, you got to take the breaks when you can.
Yeah.
But all the same, it's like sometimes you don't have the greatest lean on the fight per se, but you have a better lean on, how many rounds or inside the distance or, a method of victory. So, yeah, I mean, I just think the show is growing. We're getting better with it. And so our last prop show of the year, let's hopefully make it a special one and hit some winners.
For sure. I wasn't able to nail any of my long shots last week, and the Ferguson play really messed me up. I don't think anybody predicted either outcome in terms of Charles winning via decision, but it is what it is. This card coming up, though, it's taken a little bit of a hit. You know what I mean? We're supposed to have Leon Edwards against Khamzat Chimaev in the main event. That gets pulled apart. And then throughout the week, we've just had other fights slowly fall apart. Alexandre Pantoja versus Manel Cape, Misha Serkinov versus Ryan Spann, Tyson Nam versus Matt Schnell should be a fun fight. I think that's rescheduled for the January 20th card. But even within the last couple of days, we had Rick Glenn fall out. Luckily, they have a replacement for him in Christos Giagos. And then also this morning, Draco Rodriguez and Eamon Zahabi gets pulled because Zahabi tested positive for COVID. So luckily, we still have a decent card up ahead. I'm really looking forward to pretty much every single fight. I think the fight that I cared least about was the Eamon Zahabi and Draco Rodriguez fight, so I don't really mind that one falling off. Did you have a strong lean in that fight, or did you not really care for that one to be on this card?
No, like I had Draco Rodriguez. I just thought that him being almost 2-1 favorite over, 2 years ago, he's a white belt. King of the Cage wouldn't release from a contract because they just didn't think he was ready. Now he's taking on a guy in Eamon Zahabi who's a black belt. But truthfully, like, what does white belt, black belt really mean in 2020? Like, this is a fist fight, and Eamon Zahabi's shown very little, and Draco Rodriguez seems to be making massive improvements. Likes engaging guys. Like, yeah, I had Rodriguez. I didn't love the price. It is what it is. The Christoph Giagos replacement, I actually like that more because with Rick Glenn, super talented, but like, man, 2.5 years long layoff, hip surgery, changes jobs, leaves alpha male and moves back to Iowa, has a baby. It was just like, can I trust this guy? Giago's like, he'll stick to the game plan. Yeah. Is he limited? Of course. This is a limited opponent, though, so we don't have a line on it. We don't have numbers for the props, but at least my lean would be the Giagos money line. Seems like it's going to be safe. And then as far as Giagos banking in some rounds, Carlton Minus has been taken down, has been submitted. Maybe that's the path of victory for Giagos. His wrestling is very strong. His grappling is actually super underrated. And as far as Minus coming down and being a big 55 or waiting to see this guy in the scales, Rick Glenn's coming up. It's like Giagos is a big 155er. So like, yeah, I mean that minus definitely. He was in tough against Rick Glenn to begin with, 3-1 underdog. But I mean, the UFC didn't exactly give him like a softer matchup. Giagos is probably a little more trustworthy. Fights a way different style, but I don't mind. And we obviously don't have a number, but yeah, we had 14 fights. The UFC knew that there was going to be cancellations, so they initially I think booked 15 fights, fell down to 14 pretty quickly. Now it's sitting at 13. They were able to find one replacement, so it's possible that they find a replacement for Eamon Zahabi and somebody that's in Las Vegas short notice is able to step in for him. But to me, it seems like this probably shakes down to maybe loses another fight or two. Knock on wood. There's some really good fights on this card I do not want to lose. But the UFC knew what they were doing, I think.
For sure. I think that's why they're loading like most of the cards that are coming up with 14, 15 fights. But by the time we get to fight time, it's like 12 or 13. So at least it still shakes out to be a regular UFC card. So I'm glad that you already touched on Carlton Minus and Christos Giagos fight. That's the one that I want to start off with. We don't know where it's going to fit exactly in the TV schedule yet. Obviously, Tapology has it as number one. So that's what I'm going to go by. Personally, I think that this is a little bit of a tougher fight for Carlton Minus and Christos Giagos, who's able to like wrap the game up a little bit better. The only real deficit or flaw that I see in Christos Giagos' game is this shaky cardio. Like third round does get a little bit sketchy at times, and Carlton Minus seems like a guy that could like keep almost like a Rick Glenn type pace from minute 1 to minute 15, where he doesn't really overexert himself, but he just sticks his jab out there for 15 minutes. And if he's able to get a decision, he's able to get a decision. He doesn't seem like a crazy power puncher either. So I don't think Giagos really needs to worry too much about anything in that third round. But is there a price tag that you'd be willing? Like, is there a cap that you're putting Christos Giagos as? Because we do still also have that caveat that he's only stepping in on 2 or 3 days notice, right? How much has he really been preparing? And Carlton Minus, no disrespect to him, he doesn't really seem like the toughest guy to get prepared for. So what's the cap you would set at Giagos in terms of being a solid parlay piece? I'm sure he's not going to be anything bettable, but parlay wise.
Yeah, no, so I agree with you in that if this is Giagos in a full camp or even half a camp or even on a week's notice, whatever, it would have been fine. Christos Giagos is the favorite. He's probably should open up at 220, 240, and then it getting out of hand, we'll see it probably move closer to 3-1. But yeah, no, the variable is that Giagos is taking this fight on 2 days notice. He has not fought in like a year and a half. The Drakkar Klose fight was a year and a half ago. Since then, he had a fight with Alan Patrick booked in April, and he withdrew. So a guy coming off, a 15, 16-month layoff is a problem. Taking a fight on 2 days notice is a problem. And he has spotty cardio. You nailed it 100%. Part of that is that he muscles everything and he goes hard in the paint. Like this guy just gets on you and tries to push a pace and tries to break you and just tries to go, go, go. But as a result, it's taxing on him and he tends to give up those later rounds. That being said, though, I think that where would I be willing to pay for Giagos? 220. Again, I'd pay 220 for him. Anything above that, I don't think so, just because, short notice, like, there's a lot of question marks there. Trying to figure out the prop is the real key, though, because Christos Giagos hasn't finished anybody in 4 years, right? I mean, normally when he's winning, he's breaking these guys, he's roughing these guys up, but it's not exactly leading to finishes per se. So him being on short notice, he might try to not exert himself early. He might try to pace himself a little bit better. And as a result, this fight could definitely get some later rounds. When you look at Carlton Minus, the one problem there is that, like, his 2 losses, especially the one in PFL against Rick Story. This guy came from the Alaska regional scene, looked good against very limited competition, and then jumps up PFL against Rick Story, who's just at this point shot, but a power wrestler with a good power grappling skill. And it was no problem, when he wants to get him to the ground, he's able to get him to the ground. When he did get him to the ground, there's a big skill discrepancy, and he eventually submits him. It's not like Carlton Mines has done a whole lot since then. He's still training out of Anchorage, Alaska. He's still in his regular confines. He gets a UFC debut against Matthew Semmelsberger. Most people don't even realize why neither guy's there. And he clearly is the worst of those two guys. Like, he loses a 30-27. He feints just way too much, doesn't actually let his hands go, does have a good jab, is a bit of an awkward fighter. But with Christos Giagos, it's like, how do you take an awkward fighter and turn him into a regular fighter? You take him down, right? Like, how awkward is he off his back? Not awkward at all. Awkward standing. So as far as a prop, like, I'm leaning towards that Christos Giagos by decision, right, to try to chase a better price tag on it than whatever the money line is going to be. But then that part of me is also like, just because he hasn't finished a guy in 4 years, like, you got to realize he's fighting a lot of the top regional show guys. He's fought some couple of decent UFC veterans. Guy lost to Charles Oliveira. Like, he has at least tasted those waters. Whereas Carlton Minus is 10-0, fighting for Alaska FC, and effectively 0-2, and never won a round in those two fights, not fighting for Alaska FC. So it's like, when he jumps out of his comfort zone, he's not the same guy. But the monumental task is to take a fight on 2 days notice with no camp, coming off his 15-month layoff. So, those question marks make it a little bit sticky, but Giagos is the clear play. And I would think probably Giagos by decision.
The highly touted and ever fadeable Alaska FC. I love it over there. Having those guys coming over, Victor Rodriguez, shout out to you as well. But yeah, I think Giagos just definitely has the better game plan overall. And I wouldn't mind seeing what the over is as well. I think this could be a fight that we could see the judges' scorecards. But let's talk about a fight that we do have odds about, or odds for, and a fight that we've already broken down in the past. I think it's been 2 or 3 weeks ago that this fight was supposed to happen between Jimmy Flick and Cody Durden. The odds are roughly around the same spots. We got minus 150 on Jimmy Flick, plus 130 on Cody Durden. Last time around, I had my favorite prop on this was Jimmy Flick to win by sub at plus 135. I still kind of feel that way. Nothing is really shaking me off that. I know a lot of people want to put into stock the whole COVID situation, like depending on who had COVID, that fighter might be at a slight disadvantage coming into this fight, even with them booking it as quickly again as possible. But I like looking back at the OSP and Alonzo Menafield fight. OSP was the one that caught COVID the first time. That fight gets pushed back. He comes back and absolutely, does work on Alonzo Menafield. So I don't really believe in that narrative that whoever had COVID is at a disadvantage. Sure, it's not the greatest thing, but if it's as bad as Leon Edwards, they're probably not even going to fight for the next couple of weeks either, right? So I'm not looking too hard into that. I know Durden didn't even have a COVID. It was like a pink eye infection or something like that. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but nothing's really changed from here. I think that for Cody to be successful, he's going to have to take this to the ground. And once he gets there, we already know Jimmy Flick's game there. Cody Durden, decent stand-up as well, too. But I don't think it's anything that's going to really get him much success in this fight. I think the spot that I like the most is the over 1.5. I could see a little bit of a stalemate. But yeah, still my favorite prop. I got to say Flick by submission at plus 135. How about you? How are you seeing this fight? Anything changed for you over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I know what changes that I originally thought Cody Durden coming in. I keep saying he's making his flyweight debut because that's what he's saying, right? But apparently he had fought Jared Scoggins, the younger brother of former UFC veteran Justin Scoggins, at 125. But he just went online and talked a lot about like, geez, man, I've never made 126 before. This is a really hard weight cut. Oh, it's bogging down on me. And he had Dhiego Lima because he's ATT Atlanta, obviously. So he's got the Lima brothers as his coaching staff. But Dhiego comes on and is just like, man, well, he's going to cut off his leg to make weight. Like he's committed. He's going to make weight. So obviously he doesn't have to come to that. But he shows up to the scales. He makes weight. And he just looked anxious to me, you know? He just looked like someone who was probably a little on edge. It probably was a bit of a rough cut. He's got the sunglasses on. Obviously, I'm speculating. Guys with sunglasses probably did have a tough cut. And then for it to get canceled with this eye infection, you know, it's a basically pink eye, and to get rebooked 2 weeks later, he had made the weight. So now, you know, this is such a tough weight cut. Took so much out of him. Now he needs to remake weight. So that's a problem, right? So now I'm reanalyzing. Okay, so Cody Durden's size and strength from coming down to 125 was supposed to be his benefit to keep the fight standing. And when you do keep the fight standing, you know, he got better striking than Jimmy Flick. Jimmy Flick been knocked out 4 to 5 pro losses, doesn't exactly wear damage particularly well. But what you do see with Jimmy Flick over his last couple of fights is like improved striking, namely with the low calf kick, you know, doesn't mind working you, doesn't mind throwing them loopy hooks, but eventually he wants to set up that shot and take you to the ground. If he's able to get Durden to the ground and ends up on top, it should be Jimmy Flick. Like that is his wheelhouse, and he should be very comfortable there. If Cody Durden ends up flipping the script and getting the takedown, it should still kind of fall into Jimmy Flick's wheelhouse. Now, yes, Cody Durden does have very good ground and pound. And again, you talk about Jimmy Flick and maybe he's chinny, but like he's getting chin checks standing. He's not exactly getting smashed up on the ground, right? So because Jimmy Flick's fought like 3-4 times this year, it's been one continuous camp. And therefore his cardio problems that we used to see all the time, not exactly there. His last fight on Contender Series, he stepped in on short notice to fill in for JP Buys and ends up going out there against Nate Smith and just like putting on a clinic, really. Nate Smith may have had an injured leg, but at the same time, cardio checked out. His striking looked good. His wrestling looked career best. And he had the most submission attempts in Contender Series history and just kept going and just kept going and eventually stuck him with the 3rd round submission. So where you're saying Jimmy Flick by submission, I like that, plus 135. Is it that much better than the straight up money line at minus 150? Maybe not, but Flick's got 13 to 15 wins by submission, so it seems. But I would chase that. Why not Jimmy Flick by 2nd round submission, or why not Jimmy Flick by 3rd round submission? So Flick's submission in the 2nd round is plus 550, and Flick's submission in the 3rd round is plus 1,000. Now, we literally just saw Jimmy Flick score a 3rd round submission in his last fight. But again, with Durden having a bad weight cut, maybe having 2 back-to-back bad weight cuts, it's possible that he goes out there and is the stronger man, is able to maybe take Flick down and avoid those submission attempts early. But as his body starts to fail him, we know Jimmy Flick is not going to stop throwing up submissions. He's just going to keep chaining them together. We also know that Jimmy Flick could get a tight bite on one. He loves Darces. He loves anacondas. He loves attacking the neck, rear naked choke, guillotines. But if he doesn't get it, he's not one of these guys that, oh, I burnt out his arm. Remember Joe Rogan knows, oh, how much did he leave on the table there going for that attempt? It's like, no, Jimmy Flick's just going to do it again. So that's all super interesting to me, is that Jimmy Flick gets out of this 1st round and is able to push it a little bit. So as far as a prop I'm looking for specifically, I got a feeling this is the over 1.5. It's currently sitting at minus 130. I don't think it's a very bad price tag. Is Durden going to knock out Jimmy Flick in the 1st round? Listen, Flick has been knocked out, but not generally early in the 1st round. You know, it's mostly once he starts to tire because his game's not working for him. And is Jimmy Flick going to go out there and submit Cody Durden in the 1st round? Like, I don't know. 1.5 is something that I do see happening. When you go back to Cody Durden, he's fought very limited competition, almost all limited competition, right? You go back to his last loss, though. And Ryan Hollis, even though he was sporting a 12-13 record at the time, is like a well-known journeyman, Louisiana scene, Texas scene, decent enough grappling, really tall, rangy, like lanky guy, tough to deal with. But you saw Cody Durden in that spot. It's like, he's not a grappler. He's struggling tooth and nail with Ryan Hollis and eventually gets submitted with the rear naked choke. Since then, he's fought nobody, especially no grapplers. And so now he's taking on Jimmy Flick, who's like a bona fide grappler. And so that fight with Hollis is just 2 years ago. Durden was working a full-time job. Durden's still young. Durden's still making improvements. But like, has he bridged that gap that much in the last 2 years? I'm not 100% sure. Whereas like Jimmy Flick's been fighting on the regional scene for like 10 years. You know what I mean? Like, he's been around the block a few times. This is his
21st
moment. Yeah. 21st pro fight, huge moment, UFC debut. I heard somebody make a comment like, well, you know, when you've had 21 regional fights and then you're making the UFC. And it's like, I don't look at it like that, man. Like, timing's everything. And this guy's not one of these guys that just comes in and fan right away. He's actually got a skill set. Now, how good is Jimmy Flick in the grand scheme of things? I don't know. He's got a lot of questions to answer. What's his ceiling? What's his potential? I mean, again, I don't think sky's the limit for him. But with his submission game, like, maybe he can prove me wrong. But you got to go out there and you got to get the victory over Cody Durden. So I got the minus 1.5, or the over 1.5 is minus 130. I think that's a safe play. As far as money line thing, I think I am going to edge with Jimmy Flick. I hear exactly what you're saying. Jimmy Flick by submission, plus 135. I would grease it and get a little degen with it. and try to chase that Jimmy Flick second or third round submission just because it's a big price tag. And that's his avenue to victories. Catch this guy late once he gets tired. We know he can do it. Cody Durden's probably got more questions to answer in this fight than Flick. We know what Flick can do. With Durden, it's like he backpacked Chris Gutierrez for one round. And that's the only thing he's done. That's the only thing you've really seen him do. His regional stuff, he fought a one-night tournament, boxing, MMA, and grappling. It's like, dude, high-level guys don't do that. Have you ever seen any UFC champion do that just for shits and gigs? You ever seen any of the top contenders do that for shits and gigs? No. Because you know how it is, because you've worked with fighters coming up. You don't just take a boxing match, an MMA match, and like a kickboxing match all in the same night. That's just having a good time. That's just like you're a tough, scrappy kid. And Jimmy Flick is a technical, tough, scrappy kid. And so I think that'd probably be the difference. Jimmy Flick catches him later.
Something that I did forget to say off the top of this podcast is if you guys do have any questions about the matchup we were talking about, please do drop them in the comment section. If I find anything that I do like to address while we're going over these matchups, I would love to actually pose it to Cody and myself. One thing I want to do before we get into that question, though, is it was December 5th that they were originally scheduled. So December 4th is when Cody Durden last made weight. Now he has to do it again 2 weeks later. Who knows how much of an effect that's going to have on him, especially with the whole narrative going into the weigh-ins of him being very skeptical with his weight cut. I do want to address Killer G right here. Do we think that the fight doesn't go to decision is a solid parlay piece here? Personally, let's see what that line is at. Fight doesn't go to decision is minus 260. Not a bad parlay spot. I think it's either going to be a knockout for Durden early or a submission for our guy Jimmy Flick a little bit later. How about you?
Yeah, and I will also give a shout out to we've got, let me just get the name properly, Frank Jaudoin, right? Talking about Jimmy Flick's got a glass chin, and that all leads to the under here. And that Jimmy Flick, if he's going to win, he's probably going to snatch up a submission. When Jimmy Flick loses, he is getting chin checked, he is getting knocked out, and he's typically getting knocked out against 135ers. This fight's at 125, but the bigger, stronger guy. Durden coming down should be that bigger, stronger guy. So it seems like, fight doesn't go the distance is a lock, right? But 260 is not a price tag I like. And I say that because even though these guys have a history of finishing fights very early, they've fought in relatively low competition and finished those fights early. When you look at Jimmy Flick's last fight against Nate Smith, it was close to going the distance. It's like, 90 seconds off going the distance. And he's tried every submission in the book by that point. Nate Smith had one leg, eventually stuck him. When you look at Durden, he's not going the decision with anybody. And then his last fight with Gutierrez, it's like he just backpacked the guy for one round and then got tired and then took everything. Gutierrez is not exactly a power puncher. But you know what I mean? It's just like sometimes the higher up you fight, you start fighting these better guys. If it was a better price than 260, I'd be on board for sure. But minus 260 as a parlay piece, as a key, I don't love it. I think the number's not spot on. There is a path that this fight could go the distance. Although logically speaking, you and I are on the same page. We do think it's going to be inside the distance. You probably think the same thing. 260 is like you'd have to be certain, and I'm not that certain.
I just like the aggressiveness of Jimmy Flick's jiu-jitsu, and if he's able to get it late, I do think that he'll be able to pull off something. All right, we spent a little bit too much time on this match, but let's keep it moving. The next fight of the night, we got Tefon Nchukwi versus Jamie Pickett. Both guys making their UFC debuts here. Both guys products of the Contender Series as well too. We have heavy juice on Tefon Nchukwi at minus 325 and Jamie Pickett plus 265. Over-under is obviously at 1.5, especially when you got a Tefon Nchukwi fight. You know it's going to be 1.5. The guy can put your lights out pretty much at any time. The guy is pretty much like a middleweight Francis Ngannou, almost like that type of stereotype of guy in terms of going out there and just looking for that kill shot. However, I will give him the advantage here over Ngannou in terms of technically being a much better striker. Ngannou, we know he can just throw those lunge pails, and if he lands around them, you're going to bed. But with Nchukwi, he actually throws combinations. He throws solid leg kicks, he throws great 1-2s down the middle, has solid hooks too, very explosive as well. And he's shown when he does face a little bit of adversity, like he did in the last fight against Al Matavo, that he can come back and actually still secure the victory. Now, the more type of adversity I'd like to see is guys actually stretching him into the third round, see what that gas tank looks like. And I'm not entirely sure if Jamie Pickett's going to be that type of guy. Personally, I see that guy as somebody that has a little bit of that tall man defense syndrome where he holds his chin a little bit too high when he's throwing shots. And that's not something you're going to want to do against Tefon, who doesn't really care what you're throwing at him because he's going to counter with you, and he's going to counter pretty freaking hard. And more likely, if his strike lands, you're going out. And that's why I kind of like this kid. When I first saw him on the Contender Series, I'm like, okay, this is a prime candidate in terms of a guy that I like to fade moving forward. But when you really start to go through his tape, he may be low output at times, but he's really looking for his slots. And when he's looking for his slots, he's not looking for one punch. He's looking for an accumulation of punches, which is something that I like seeing out of these guys. Now, it's hard for me to truly pick a side in terms of the over-under here, because I could see it get done early. I could see it get done late in terms of Tafon just finding that spot that he needs to get the knockout here. So obviously Tafon via KO is minus 155, a little bit too much juice for, prop. When we're looking for props, we're looking for something with a nice plus number beside it. So the spot that I'm looking at the most, and Chukwi to win inside round 1 at plus 165, I think that might be the best spot here. Jamie Pickett's made his rounds though. The guy has definitely been around the scene. He's been with one of those organizations. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but they're like those organizations that just build these prospects and just wait till they get to the UFC. We got TKO that normally does it. We've seen a couple of guys from that scene go over there. Cage Warriors does the same thing. Same with King of the Cage. They always have these select group of prospects that they want to continue to water and flourish them into the UFC. And Jamie Pickett was definitely one of those guys getting those kind of a toss-up matchup in some of his past fights. But I like Tafon here. I think this is a passable fight for him. He's only 4-0, 7-0 totally. He had 3 amateur fights as well too. But I do think he gets this one done. Jamie just doesn't really show me much in terms of being able to sustain the damage that's going to be coming his way from Tafon. Also, another interesting note about this fight: it's going to be at 185. Tafon, I believe this is his first fight down at 185. How he's going to lose that, I don't know, but we'll find out on weigh-in day, which is why normally we do that Friday night stream so we can actually, break down those things. So this is definitely going to be something that we're watching on the scales. But personally, I like Tafon inside round 1, plus 165. I think that's the best plus money prop that you can find on this fight. How about yourself?
Yeah, the Tafon dropping down to 185 is interesting because on one hand, it's like, all right, this is probably where he should be. And now that 6-foot frame with 77-inch reach is going to be nice and big at middleweight. But it's interesting because when he fights William Knight at 220, I thought that was the best he ever looked. He looked pretty solid. Beats William Knight, who ended up being a fairly legitimate enough, up-and-comer. Good little win. And then you see him on the Contender Series at 205 against Almontavo. And he didn't look quite as good. And that's at 205. He should have been better there. Now at 185, again, we're expecting fireworks from him. We're expecting him to this is the weight class. But again, it's how much does the weight cut potentially take out of him? How much of him being that much more mobile heavyweight? You see the same thing with Justin Ledet, by the way. Tafon and Jukui is not Justin Ledet. But Justin Ledet fighting heavyweights is way better than Justin Ledet fighting light heavyweights because he was way faster against heavyweights. Against light heavyweights, it was oh, not so much. And so when you fight heavyweight, they got low output, right? They're not out there throwing 100 significant strikes. But at light heavyweight against Almontavo, shout out to Alaska FC. This guy's straight out of Alaska. And he walks in there and he just quite simply threw more punches. The punch stats prior to him getting knocked out, he's outstriking Tafon and Jukui 55-44. And Jukui is just allowing this guy to beat him to the punch. That's a problem to me because Pickett can go out there and, as we've seen in his last fight against Johan Potty, throw a 20-30 punch combination. This guy doesn't mind throwing volume. He's got an 80-inch reach. He's got a super long reach. He's never been knocked out. So it's he poses some variables that with Tafon, I think this guy's legit. I think this guy's good. I think he's one of those really, really good strikers. He's 13-1, I think, in Pro Muay Thai. You can watch some of those replays. He looks really slick. As far as the MMA striking goes, it's extremely technical. And I made this mistake of kind of talking. And you know what? Izzy was, I guess, in a similar situation. A Leona Machida way back in the day was in a similar situation. They're so good at striking, it seems at some points like they're not doing anything, right? Rafael Fiziev last week is my example.
Yeah.
He seems to have low output, right? Why was he not just murdering Alex White? Why was he not going out there and murdering, Mark Diakese? I guess in hindsight he did, but it's plays with his food a little bit, takes his time. It's he's on such a higher level that it's not just yeah, I got to throw something. It's just he's just analyzing data and just on the fly, downloading information and eventually is able to solve the problem. Tafon Njoku was Almontavo. There's a huge skill discrepancy. And yet Tafon lets this guy work his way into the fight, lets this guy have a couple of moments. And then as soon as he sees that opening, he bodies him. So do you go home and you're oh, dude, I gave that guy a fight. It's he went to the hospital for a week in a coma, right?
You were out for a while.
Yeah. And you see that with high level guys. It's they bait you, and then you're getting your confidence up. Dude, I landed. I'm going to do it again. It's just no, you won't. So with Tafon, again, he's a very high level striker. I think if Pickett decides to, play that game with him, he's in trouble. With Tafon's takedown defense, man, it's actually pretty solid. Again, he's fought absolutely nobody, but he's stuffed virtually all of the takedowns that he's faced so far. In the William Knight fight, as soon as it's you try to engage in the grappling with him, he just made you pay big time. Now, he's a Team Lloyd Irvin guy, so theoretically speaking, you got Lloyd Irvin. Let's put his shady past aside. you got that guy in your corner giving you advice. Like, no doubt you're making improvements. He's still young. He's one of these guys that has great body composition. Like, he could potentially grow into a future contender, but he's young in his career, and he's taking on a guy in Jamie Pickett that's not, because people keep saying like, oh man, it took him 3 times to get a contender series contract, right? It's just like, he's not that big of a joke. Again, he's never been knocked out. So what I'm going to go with this one, when we're not here to talk about money lines, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the props. I like the over 1.5. I say that because Stefan's never been over 1.5, and I think that's why it's cooked into the line. That's just what, -130 for the over 1.5. But he's fought a really low level of competition, right? With Jamie Pickett, he's never been knocked out. Is Stefan going to go out there and submit him? No. Is Stefan going to go there and knock him out? Entirely possible, because Jamie Pickett never been knocked out. Jamie Pickett's never fought nobody, no big power punchers. Puana Sariano probably being the biggest guy, and he's very green in his career and was kind of a wrestler, boxer grappler type. If Stefan lands one, he could be the first guy, but I don't think that Stefan's going to push the issue, because similar to Al Montavo, he'll take his time and he'll set up the punch. And the Al Montavo fight wasn't an over 1.5, but it was close. And you can see where a more skilled guy is going to be able to take him into some deeper waters. And if it turns out that Stefan is not the real deal, is a total sham, we've all been lied to, the bright lights get to him, then it would be an over 1.5 still, right? Because Pickett's not knocking out Stefan in the first round. Pickett's not going to shoot a takedown and submit him in the first round. He would pull one of these game plans where it's like, dude, I threw way more strikes. I outstruck him, say, 100 to 75, and he had the more eye-appealing shots, but it ended up being a close decision, and they gave it to the guy in the work rate. And he would grease Stefan out on a decision, but your 1.5 would hit. So the 1.5, 130, that's the play here. Stefan wins and is the real deal. I think it takes him at least 1.5 rounds to knock out Jamie Pickett. And if Jamie Pickett springs the upset, it's going to be a decision. So you'd be covered, in my opinion, you'd be covered both sides. If you have Stefan on a money line, great. If you don't, and you're just playing the prop side, I think you'd be covered regardless of who the winner is. But, when you're playing with that kind of dynamite, especially him at 185, like, maybe he's Jared Cannonier now, right? Yeah. Maybe at 205, it's like, oh, yeah, he could bang. And heavyweight, sorry. And then at 205, it's like, oh, yeah, this guy's got some. And then at 185, it's like,
anything lands, this guy's going out.
It's possible. It's possible. He's a lot more technically sound than a Jared Cannonier. But wait until you see the weigh-ins, if anything. I don't think the money line's going to get that much crazier out of hand. But for me personally, as a prop, the over 1.5.
Yeah, I find also him at -325 coming into his 5th fight is kind of a tough sell, no matter how good he's looked in his previous 4 fights. Going for a guy that's only 4-0 in the UFC doesn't really pay out to be like more often than not, in my opinion. So I still like him, but I'm not paying that type of price. The over 1.5 is definitely the safest spot in my opinion. All right, let's keep things moving on. We got a catchweight bout here at 195 pounds between our guy Deron Winn versus Antonio Hoyo. Probably one of the funniest face-offs we're ever going to have tomorrow between a 6'3" Antonio Hoyo and I believe a 5'6" Deron Winn. Why this guy's fighting at 185 pounds, now at 195 pounds, because they got to make a weight class for him or something. I'm not entirely sure which side of the coin that this is on, but I'm interested to see this fight strictly for the face-off alone, man. It's going to be some shit. Like it reminds me of a possible stare down between Stefan Struve and Mark Hunt. They fought in the past. We've seen that before. It's like a short heavyweight against a tall heavyweight. This is pretty much happening at 195. For me, I think this is a tough fight for Deron Winn. I think it's going to be tough for him to continuously get Antonio Hoyo down. At a certain point, technique doesn't really overtake a size advantage, and the type of size advantage that my guy Antonio Hoyo is going to have here is going to be too much for Deron Winn to overcome. So he could be successful in that first round. Outside of that, I don't really think he's going to have much success. The spot that I was looking at here was Antonio Hoyo via KO at +455. He is, before coming to the UFC, most of his fights were via finish. He was a finisher. I do recall playing the under 2.5 in his fight against Andre Muniz. That didn't end up hitting, but I just remember both guys being quite set on getting finishes or getting finished in their fights. And when neither of those transpired in that fight, I was very bummed. But I think here, I think we'll see Hoyo survive that first round. Deron Winn's not a crazy power puncher when he gets these guys down. He's more of a smotherer than he is a Khabib, if you want to call it that. With Hoyo, solid leg kicks. I could see him just targeting the body of Deron Winn the entire time. Even a knee, just a regular knee to the body, might just knock this guy out on the chin. Like this fight will make absolutely no sense once we see these guys touch foot in the cage here. I like Hoyo. I like Hoyo via KO +455. I believe you have a different view of this fight. Let us know what it is.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna lean ever so slightly Duran win. And listen, I'm not super confident on it by no means. I just think that with Duran win, listen, the joke is that he's 5'6", like he's the size of a featherweight, and yet he fights at middleweight and now a catchweight of 195, as you're saying. But Duran wins very much got like that DC build where he's just a short, stocky power wrestler. He's not DC, not by a mile, and doesn't have the mentality, doesn't have that ethic, doesn't have all these different variables. But again, it's like he's one of those guys that just is not going to fight at featherweight. He's not going to fight at lightweight. He's not going to fight at welterweight. He's not, truthfully, probably not really going to fight at middleweight. I think he struggles to make middleweight. You look at Duran Win, he was a scary prospect prior to coming to the UFC, right? So his UFC debut, his MMA debut, he weighs in at 203.6. We're all laughing about how small this guy's at middleweight. It was 203.6, okay? His second fight was an LFA fight, Sioux Falls Fight Night 1. He came in at a catchweight of 191. His third, now he gets finishes in both those fights and looks good. He's fighting bums, by the way. This Cody Santos guy, bum. He's at 205. Ahmed White, never fought again, by the way, on a Bellator regional. It's at 192 pounds. He fights Tom Lawler in the Liddell Ortiz card. That's his last fight before coming to the UFC. And he weighs in at 205.6. He's 5'6", and yet coming to the UFC, he had fought exclusively between 205 and 191. So now his UFC debut, he takes on Eric Spicely. This is his first time officially making 185. He didn't look good now, did he? He was supposed to go out there and smoke Eric Spicely, but he didn't look good whatsoever. Part of me wonders, we all assume it's really easy for this guy to cut weight. He's a career-long wrestler, and he's only 5'6", but it's like, I don't think he does cut weight particularly good. Now, the Darren Stewart fight, that's his second fight in the UFC. He misses weight. He comes in at 188, and he looks awful, and he looks tired. The Gerald Mearshart fight, he made weight, and as a result, he looked awful and looked tired. This fight being at 195 and it was moved to 195, that actually plays better towards him. I think he'll have a better weight cut. He should have a little more gas in the tank. And what he needs to do is just get this fight to the ground. You can't strike with anybody. You're just too small. And at least your compadre DC hit like an absolute hammer and could fold up these big heavyweights. You're not folding up anybody. You're not folding up Tom Lawler or Eric Spicely. You're not knocking out anybody. You need to just play to your hand, and that's get these fights to the ground. There's no doubt Duran Win can take down pretty much anybody in the division. Problem is he can't hold down anybody in the division. When I look at Arroyo, I'm like, Arroyo is got variables in that he's 6'3" and he's a better striker and he's a jiu-jitsu guy. But like, if he's flat on his back, those long limbs are throwing up submissions on a guy with no neck, and he doesn't get tired after 2 rounds or gets tired in the third and you don't stick him with a finish, Duran Win is a live underdog. Now, live underdog sounds crazy because it's like, how bad does he look? But at the very least, the guys that he's lost to, a split decision, Darren Stewart, which should have been unanimous, he lost. But Darren Stewart is all right, right? And then Gerald Mearshart, like, as long as you don't chin check him in the first minute, he's all right. Like, these guys are not terrible. It's not like he's losing just the worst guys in the division and is a putz. He's still got that wrestling in his back. Anyways, listen, I'm not confident at all. I'm just saying this is a dogger pass for me. I would maybe take that small shot on Duran Win. When you guys see the parlays, the greasy side of them, we'll have Duran Win. What I'm more specifically looking at is this fight goes the distance at -110. It's -110, so it's a decent enough price tag. The reason why I say that is if Duran Win does win, as we talked about, that's kind of my lean. He's not finishing anybody. He's not knocking out anybody, and he's never submitted an opponent yet. He's going to want to just take the guy down, positionally hold him down. I'm sure he's been working on his top game, holding the guy down. That's just going to kill time off the clock. With Arroyo, he's never been knocked out, right? He's been submitted a couple times, but he's not getting submitted by Darren Win. Mm-hmm. And he's got a good submission game. You're right. Maybe he's able to catch Duran Win late. We see with Gerald Mearshart, he actually hurt, really stung, and then submitted Duran Win in that third round once he's huffing for gas. So maybe it's possible that Arroyo springs that third round finish on a Duran Win is completely gas. But like more so than that, I don't know. Like I don't know that his finishing abilities has been translating to like the highest level of opponents. He mostly got to take on these lower level regional scene guys in order to get that submission or get a knockout. Duran Win has at least trained with the elite of the elite. It just turns out he ain't one of them, right? Mm-hmm. So probably a pass. I'm going to classify this as a dogger pass. I think the fight is going to go the distance regardless. It's -110. That would be my prop play on this one. Duran Win by decision. I could see that angle as well, but like, no, I'd rather just take that +135. And to be honest, like I'm not even super high on it anyway. So like, don't waste your money chasing a play on a card that has 13 fights and plenty of action, right?
This is probably one of the bigger bombs in terms of a prospect coming into the UFC that hasn't really panned out the way most people expected it to, especially being like DC's little brother. Duran Win didn't really pan out to be, especially when you had that like close fight against Eric Spicely. I don't think a lot of people really put too much stock in him afterwards. They expected him to go out there and just start Spicely, and he was unable to do that. But this fight against Arroyo should definitely tell us a lot. He has a huge opponent to overcome in this one. So definitely a big fight for him here. All right, let's keep things moving on. Another fight we were supposed to have a couple weeks ago, now rescheduled for this card. Carl Roberson, 9-3, coming in against Dalcha Lungiambula, 10-2. We got minus 255 on Carl Roberson, nice and juicy there. And then at plus 215, we got Dalcha Lungiambula. The spot that I like the most is the over 1.5 at minus 145. I feel like this is a fight that we might see pushed a little bit more. Dalcha is one of those guys that, in my opinion, looks for the kill shot more often than not. Goes to his grappling, which doesn't seem all that great when he needs to. That's kind of the path that he takes. Carl Roberson, in my opinion, a much better fighter overall, better output, better ground game, in my opinion. Could be live for a submission, but not really banking on that. I like Roberson here, and I do like him a little bit late too. I think he could get it finished maybe late second or third round. Roberson via TKO at plus 250 is. I want a little bit of a better price on that, but I do think that this goes over 1.5. I think Corey Roberson is just a more proven fighter at this time. Dalcha did make his rounds over in EFC, won the belt over there, beat a couple of decent names, but he has turned out to be a guy that we expect to see in terms of just going out there and seeking that knockout. If he's not able to get the knockout, things get a little bit fishy because his output is just not the greatest, right? So even whenever his fights go to a decision, it's going to be definitely really, really difficult for him to get the judge's nod, especially coming in here against Carl Roberson, who just seems much more comfortable in every aspect of MMA. So at first I was questioning why he was such a heavy favorite here, but after you run the tape, you kind of understand it. But still, I have this just sneaky suspicion about this fight that I don't really want to place my money on it outside of that over 1.5 round mark. I think that's a solid play here. I think it's going to be relatively low output from Dalcha, no finish from Carl early, but he waits for Dalcha to start sucking wind a little bit more and then get a late finish, similar to maybe how Magomed Mustafa or Magomed Ankalaev was able to do. But I still think that Ankalaev is miles better than Carl Roberson at this point in time. So personally, I'm going with Roberson, probably late finish, but over 1.5 is a spot that I like most. How about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, the UFC with the weight classes is kind of a dirty bitch, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Why are a lot of these guys fighting in these weight classes? I'm not sure, but this is a good example, right? We just talked about Deron Wynn getting a 195-pound catch weight, right? Carl Roberson is not a middleweight. He's a big guy. He fought Glover Teixeira at 205 pounds. Since dropping down, he made middleweight a couple of times against some lower level guys, but his last fight against Marvin Vettori, man, he didn't just miss weight. He missed weight by 5 pounds. He came in at 190. Like, him making middleweight is just, I don't know. Do you remember? Probably most people don't remember, but he fought Jerome Le Banner in France. He's like his pro kickboxing debut. And Jerome Le Banner is like all of 240 pounds of steroided up French muscle. You know what I mean? Like, this guy, Carl Roberson, is a bigger guy. Him coming down to 185, I think he was trying to get away from those Glover Teixeiras of the world, somebody that's going to be able to just come in, use that size and physicality and superior grappler to take him down and just neutralize him and eventually submit him. So you come down to 185, you want to be the bigger guy, but like, how much do those weight cuts take out of you? Dalcha, meanwhile, is coming down from 205 to 185 the first time. Have you seen the way this guy's put together? Like, where is he going to find the 20 pounds? Like,
Yeah.
Why not let these guys find how to catch weight at 195? Like,
Yeah.
wouldn't that make sense, man? And the same thing, it's like, why not have matched up Dalcha versus Tafon in a fight that you knew was going to deliver, and have Carl Roberson versus Jamie Pickett? And you can give these guys, like, it doesn't always have to be a catch weight, but just like give them a little bit more lean. But this becomes a fight where you have to wait till you see the weigh-ins, 100%. Because one with Carl Roberson, it's like he's going to struggle to make 185. So I'd love to see him on the scales. And with Dalcha's coming down for the first time. And not only that, Dalcha's coming down for the first time, and he's 35 years old. So, like, that's not exactly a great time to be making, the weight cut for the first time. And listen, I'm notorious for saying this, but most of these weight classes are 10-pound differences, and 125 to 135, 35 to 45, 45 to 55. When you drop from 205 pounds to 185, you're dropping 20 pounds, man. That's 2 weight classes at 35. Like, I don't know. So now let's go back to the Magomed Ankalaev fight. He's super flat-footed in that fight, and then eventually, starts to get tired a little bit. I think as far as this fight plays out, Carl Roberson is so more technically sound as a striker that he should just be able to pick him off with the leg kicks. He'd just be able to pick him off with the jab. And just, if Dalcha eventually decides to storm forward, which I think is what he's going to try to do at some point, he's just going to intercept him. I compare to Dalcha Champion, he used to call himself. Although when Joanna Champion said it, it was like, all right, some good day, girl, someday. Yeah. When Dalcha says it, it's like, come on, bro. Like, let me just figure out how to say your last name. I ain't going to call you Champion. Lungiambula? Okay. You're Dalton Lungiambula. You're not Dalton Champion. Anyways, he reminds me a lot of Abdullah Razak Al Hassan, right? They're judo black belts. They're big, strong, physically well put together guys, a little bit older in the game, like to go out there and just slang that leather. When it works for them, it works for them. When it doesn't, it doesn't. When they fight guys that there's a skill discrepancy there, that guy usually ends up finding the path of victory. And for that reason, I think Carl Roberson's able to pull it off. Could Dolce use that judo black belt to flip the script and get the takedown on Carl Roberson? Yeah, for sure. That is a viable path of victory for him. My problem there is that I don't think he has the gas to consistently stick to that viable game plan for 3 rounds. And so at some point, he's going to be like Wellington Turman, where he's getting lost in some of those spots, and it allows Carl Roberson just to rack up the better striking stats. So, I mean, I guess I would chase the over 1.5. And there's not a whole lot of great prices on this one. And really, truthfully, I do want to see both guys on the scale before I make that finalized pick.
I'm absolutely with you there. Dolce coming down to 185 is going to be very interesting to see on the scales. That guy is thick with like quadruple of C's right there for sure. All right, let's keep this thing moving. We got Patty Kianzad versus Sijara Eubanks coming up. We do have plus 140 on Patty and minus 160 on Sijara. This is a fight that I've kind of been like bouncing around in my head a little bit more often than I should. I mean, I'm passing on it all in all. You could see the new and improved-ish Sijara Eubanks outside of that fight against Ketlin Vera, where she was just outpowered and outgunned. She's going out there taking some of these ladies down and kind of controlling them with her high-level jiu-jitsu. I'm not sure if that's going to completely work here against Patty, who in my opinion has the better stand-up here. She's going to be slightly bigger, which kind of sucks for Sijara not being able to make the 125-pound limit. A lot of fighters are, or at least her, she should be at 125, because more often than not, when she's going into these fights, she's absolutely outsized. At 125, she just fits in much, much better. Here as well against Patty, she's kind of lucky that Patty is really only a striker. Like, she's obviously a mixed martial artist, but her preferred method of going about her fights is with her striking, so she doesn't really have to worry about Patty going out there and kind of just overpowering her or anything like that. I think if this does get into grappling and clinch exchanges, Sijara might have a slight advantage here, but I think Patty will do a decent enough job of keeping this on the outside, kind of just landing some decent shots and just going to a decision victory. So Patty via decision is a spot that I'd like, which is plus 190. But do I really trust her for 15 minutes to go out there and keep this fight on the feet? Absolutely not, which is why I'm not taking the plus 140 shot on her, even as an underdog here. So I know you probably like the over 2.5 here at minus 390. I know it's a safe spot, and I know most women's MMA fights go and hit that over 2.5 spot. But what's your feel here? Personally, for me, again, Patty Kianzad via decision. I think that's a solid plus 190. What about you?
Okay, yeah, so Patty Kianzad is underdog money straight up, and I think that's a decent play. Patty Kianzad by decision. If she's going to win this fight, you take that decision. I don't like that over 2.5. I don't like that fight goes the distance, just because it's a big, big, big price tag. And Patty Kianzad, where she has struggled, is the bigger, more superior technical grappler gets on top of her, and she's giving up submissions. If you're getting submitted by Macy Chiasson, you will get submitted by Sijara Eubanks if you give up your back, if you get tired, if you give her that compromising situation. But I think more often than not, she prevails a little bit, keeps this fight standing, and works Eubanks over. I mean, ultimately, Eubanks is a big, strong 125er. Her struggling to make weight and getting moved to 135, she can win fights. You know, she definitely proved me wrong in the Julia Avila fight. But ultimately, like, her biggest weapon is now taken off the table, and that's that ability to have that size and that grit and just, you know, take you down. People time and time again keep saying, you know, her striking's making a lot of improvements. Look at the Aspen Ladd fight. Did you look at the Aspen Ladd fight? Did it seem like her striking is making improvements, or did it seem like Aspen Ladd has an inability to move her head off the line? Like, all she does is line her up with the same right hand, but she just throws the same thing over and over and just becomes super telegraphed. With Patty Kianzad, she's a way better striker. She's the bigger girl, and she's got way more output. You look at that last fight with Betch Kohea. It's Betch. I get it. And, you know, MMA math doesn't work here, right? Because Patty beat Betch, whereas Eubanks lost to Betch, whereas Patty lost to Julia Avila, whereas Eubanks Avila. It's all those styles make fights. The way this one plays out, it's striker versus grappler. It's just I'm thinking that the striker's bigger, the takedown defense is not as bad as you think, and it's the output. So again, going back to the Betch fight, she outlands her 103 to 56. You know, basically doubles her up. The Jess Rose Clark fight, it's 98 to 65. Again, just doubles her up. You see where she's starting to fill out a little bit. You see where she's definitely been working on her grappling. And then you also look at the fact that she's stuffing a lot of takedowns. You know, the Macy Chiasson fight, she gets submitted with a rear naked choke, but she's 6 for 6 on her takedown defense. And Chiasson's not a great wrestler, but she's 145. That fight was at 145 pounds. This is a big girl. This is one of the few, you know, featherweights. I get she's fighting at 35 now, but is a big girl. And since then, you just see more improvements. Betch eventually gets her down, but she gets back up. I think that your takedown defense should be enough to just keep it long enough on the feet that you can just chip away at Eubanks, outpoint her, keep throwing the strikes. And so for that reason, I think that Kianzad's a live dog. I think that, like you're saying, Kianzad's probably, if she's going to win, probably be by decision. Plus 190 is an excellent price tag as far as that's concerned. But it's women's MMA versus Could Eubanks get the fight to the ground, end up on top? Yeah, for sure. Is these COVID cards a little bit all over the place? There's a little bit of unknowns. Is it a little too much price, this and that? Like, we can make all those arguments, sure. But I think Penny is a superior fighter. She's just got to make sure this fight don't hit the ground more often than not, and she should be able to win the day with her striking.
It got a little bit sketchy for her against Betch when Betch was able to get that top position in the second round. Then we saw Penny work her way back to her feet. I don't think she'll have as much success getting her way back to her feet against Sijara if this does hit the ground, as I do feel like, obviously, we both know this and we agree on this, that Sijara is a much better jiu-jitsu player when it comes to Betch Correa. So, yeah, Patty definitely needs to make sure that her back does not hit the floor. Otherwise, she's going to be in some trouble here. All right, let's keep things moving along. We got Anthony Pettis in a fight that not a lot of people expected him. I even texted my boy Tony that I do Combative Swords with. I'm like, Anthony Pettis is his next fight set up. What do you think it is? And I'm like, I'll give you 15 guesses, and you still probably won't get it here. We got Alex Morono coming up here off of a win, I believe, over Maurice McKee last time around, where he went to a decision. That's a fight where I had the under 2.5 as well. They went to war in that fight and nobody went out, so that was very unfortunate there. Right now we got minus 230 on Showtime Pettis, plus 190 on Alex Morono. If this fight was made maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we're talking minus 450 Anthony Pettis, right? Plus 300 Alex Morono. The over under side at 2.5, with the over being minus 210, something that I agree with. The spot that I like here is Morono to win via decision. We got plus 345. That's a nice and juicy tag right there. Now, skill-wise, Pettis probably absolutely wipes the floor with this guy. But we haven't really seen the Pettis that we've known to come in and love. You know what I mean? I will say looking at his IG and all that stuff, he looks to be in phenomenal shape, much better shape than he did against Cowboy Cerrone. But I feel like that Cowboy Cerrone fight was a little bit more of a short notice fight for both guys. I believe that was the first fight back from this whole COVID situation. So I think they just took the fight because it was a stacked card. But he looks in much better shape. That's something that I'll give him props for. I heard that he's also off the booze now too. He's trying to take this absolutely serious, and he's trying to like get his head completely in the game. Now, if tip-top Anthony Pettis shows up, he probably knocks out Alex Morono in the first round. Let's be honest. That's probably his best path to victory here, because Alex Morono, he is a grinder. He is a guy that can go out there, push you up against the cage, take you down, just like he did in the last fight against Reese McKee. He's absolutely live to do that now. But him thinking that he can outstrike and outpoint out Anthony Pettis on the feet is going to be absolutely criminal. Now, the caveat I think a lot of people are overlooking here is one of the last fights that Fortis MMA had was Carlos Dhiego Ferreira against Anthony Pettis. That's the same camp that Alex Morono comes from. I think you got to be completely dumb to not take the same type of game plan that Dhiego Ferreira has implemented on Anthony Pettis and kind of try to replicate it. Now, I'm not saying he's Dhiego Ferreira and he'll be able to complete it to a T, but him even trying to do that opens up much more winning possibilities for Alex Morono here. So I do think that he could take whatever Pettis is giving him in that first round. As long as he doesn't get knocked out or anything like that, he should be able to push Pettis. You know, can you really trust Pettis in 2020? Not 100% sure. He needs to go out there and show us that we can trust him. He didn't look all that amazing in the Cowboy fight. A lot of people even scored that fight for Cowboy. So if that Pettis shows up against Morono here, I think Morono goes out there and decisions this guy. Just pushes him up against the cage, roughs him up. Hopefully, again, as long as he doesn't get knocked out, he should be able to go out there and kind of just outpace, outpressure. And we know that's the way to beat Anthony Pettis, is keep the pressure on him, push him up against the cage, take him down, beat him up, just suck the motivation out of him. And I think that Alex Morono would be able to do that. And I think he has a great team behind him who's already faced Anthony Pettis in the past that can implement this type of game plan. So personally, I like the Morono by decision at plus 345. I think that's a solid spot. What about your side?
Yeah, I agree with you. With Anthony Pettis, I mean, he's coming off the win over Donald Cerrone, but realistically, yeah, as far as media members scoring it goes, it was pretty much split. Half of them scored it for the win for Donald Cerrone. Most of the fans, I think it was like, according to MMA Decisions anyways, and they've got a registered, how many people voted? 318 people voted, and it's 66% for Donald Cerrone. Rewatching the fight, yeah, it's close either way that you look at it. I think that there's an argument for both guys winning, but it kind of seemed like it wasn't just a runaway Anthony Pettis, we're back victory. And that's the problem with Anthony Pettis. Let's say he does drop that decision. Let's say it doesnesn't go his way. Well, now effectively he's 1-4 in his last 5 fights with the one shot. I'll stand by this. Lucky punch over Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He looked great against Michael Chiesa, but outside of that fight, it's just been a lot of inconsistency from Anthony Pettis. I think you can go back and you can say, geez, he looks in awesome shape on his Instagram, and that's going to be super important. But he's just a lost man. He's looking for something, and I don't exactly know what it is. But just keep in mind that this guy was the world champion at 155 pounds. One of the best, they thought, to do it at 155, right? When he took on Rafael Dos Anjos, he was like a minus 365 favorite over RDA. That's how much people really believe that this guy was like the next coming, that he was going to be some great champion. And then USADA comes in, And like since then, it's just been like all over the place. So from 155, he realizes, geez, I can't compete with 155s anymore. So he tries to go down to 145, right? Misses weight against Charles Oliveira, got absolutely thrashed by Max Holloway. And then it's like, oh, I can't make 145. I'm too big for that. Come to 155, go to 170. Left Duke Rufus's and went to Greg Jackson's for 2 camps, lost both of the fights, and then came back. Like, his life has just been a lot of like moving parts. He's moving weight classes. He tried to move camps. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of him backing up. There's, you know, him in the Dustin Poirier fight. I think he wanted a way out and he had a rib injury, so he got his way out. And then him in the Tony Ferguson fight, he starts off well. You know, Anthony Pettis often does start off well, but as soon as the pressure gets put on him, he just like folds, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I got a broken hand. Like, does anybody remember Uriah Faber versus Matt Brown too, where he fights with 2 broken hands for 3 rounds and just throws strictly elbows, still shoots takedowns? It's like, man, are you in it or are you not in it? You're a former world champion. You're supposed to have that back class and that pedigree, but he's searching for something. I don't know. With Sergio didn't look UFC ready, and then Sergio goes to Bellator, and fuck, man, he looks legit. Sergio looks really good in Bellator. Anthony's probably one of these 60 UFC cuts because his base salary is $470,000, right? So why would he be now fighting Alex Morono? He needs to fight a guy to justify that pay. But it's because like we can justify cutting him if he loses to Alex Morono, who would probably not even crack a main card in Bellator. So it's like that's the narrative here, is that the UFC is looking to release these Jacare Souzas. They're looking to get rid of these OSPs. They're looking to get rid of these Shogun Huas. These guys are not winning over non-contenders. It's time, right? That's the matchup here with Morono. It seems like they're doing him a favor. I don't know. I don't think they have the confidence in him. And so this is interesting, right? Anthony Pettis, mind you, there's finishes, and that's always got to be factored in. But Anthony Pettis has had 19 fights in the UFC, okay? The most he's ever scored, significant strikes-wise, in 19 UFC fights is the time that he landed 80 significant strikes on Jim Miller. He has no fucking output, man. He waits for a stupid cartwheel kick or some dumbass strike. Like, yeah, he knocked out Stephen Thompson. Only guy to do it, by the way. That shit is dope. Yep. But this is the MMA game. Like, you can land stuff like that. I'm saying as highly, he's so technical, he just sits there and waits for it to happen, right? By comparison, Morono, fighting way worse guys, routinely throws that up. Routinely throws up 100 significant strikes. The Riz McKee fight, you see him throw 176 or land 176. But the Song Kanon fight, 98. The Max Griffin fight, 81. And he lost that fight, by the way. Or sorry, he won that fight, but, you know, a close enough fight. Sorry, the James Montosri fight, 111 strike. So you made great point. Is he the more technical striker? No, not by a long shot. Does he have the ability to just keep coming forward and stay in his face and just keep throwing and slowly break this guy? Yeah, absolutely. And then the X factor is, you mentioned it prior to the Riz McKee fight. Why doesn't Alex Morono use his wrestling? He's a BJJ black belt, apparently. He's training at Fortis MMA. The guys in the room are saying that he's a really good grappler. He's training at an optimal level all the time. He's getting these rounds in. Why not use the wrestling? And I said, man, Pre, what are you talking about? The guy never wrestles. Just doesn't do it.
What are you smoking?
And I can't, hook me up. It's the holiday season. But I can't bank on this guy to do something that he's never done before. I just don't think it's in him. And then he goes out there, looks like a good wrestler, right? But then afterwards, this is the key. In the post-fight interview, they're like, oh, talk about the fight. He makes mention. He's like, oh, man, I hit the guy with everything. I was thinking, oh, man, what am I going to have to do to take this guy to there? And then I just decided to take him down. And then I was like, why didn't I just do this earlier? Ooh, the gears. The gears are trying to move in his head. He just figured it out. This ground game is way easier. So it's like, dude, stay in Pettis' face. Pressure, pressure, pressure. Throw the strikes. Don't get caught. See, and then the last thing is people keep saying, well, he's chinny. He got touch of death by Khaos Williams, who has the touch of death. He got touch of death by Nico Price, who has the touch of death. Yeah. These are two of the heaviest hitting guys at this weight class, and they iced him, sure. Anthony Pettis better hope that he puts a head kick alongside this guy's head, and it puts him out. Because if he doesn't, he's going to have to deal with this guy in his face, pressuring him and trying to take him down. And then the last thing there is that you can say, listen, Alex Morono took down Riz McKee. Big whoop-de-doo. Anthony Pettis has been working a lot on his wrestling over the years. And that is true. Anthony Pettis has been working a lot on his wrestling, but it does not translate into success in the UFC. Donald Cerrone took him down twice. Yeah. Dhiego Pereira took him down 3 times at will. Nate Diaz used that little judo toss to just toss him down whenever he wanted. And it was just like, he just gives them up so easily. Once he is on the ground, he's a BJJ black belt himself. He's throwing up submissions, but like, it's hard to consistently win fights off your back. And outside of triangle choking Michael Chiesa, or, you know, picking up a submission here and there, it would be tough for him. So if this was closer to an even money fight, which I actually kind of lined up in my head, it's closer to an even money fight, then it's like, yeah, maybe you take that last shot on Anthony Pettis, but don't. You don't need to do it. You look at the guys, the veterans, those guys that were at the top of the game in the UFC, his era of guys, they're all done. Yeah. You look at the guys in Bellator, same thing. They're all struggling. Benson Henderson, Anthony Pettis' most legendary wins over guys that they're not doing it anymore either, to be honest with you. The game has passed them by, so to speak. And Morono's not a next generational talent, but he's that guy. He's that guy. This is the biggest fight of his life, the biggest payday of his life. Puts him on the map. He wants it. Anthony Pettis probably had to Google search Alex Morono a few times to figure out who the fuck it was, right?
Yeah.
So I think Morono springs the upset. And as far as props go, you nailed it. The Morono by decision prop.
I think if you want to get fancy with it, Pettis wins in round 1 plus 475. If you have any confidence in Pettis, that's probably the way that he gets it done. Just lands the clean shot. Like, again, much crisper striker, is able to throw those straight shots down the middle. If he catches Morono on the button, he could absolutely put him out in that first round. However, after that, I think it's going to be all Morono. And another possible live betting opportunity, if you guys are into that type of stuff too, is looking at Morono after round 1. All right, let's keep this train moving along. We got, what do we got next? Marcin Tybura welcoming Greg Hardy to just the outside of the elite of the heavyweight division now. This is the type of opponent that we've kind of been waiting for Greg Hardy to fight now. He had that Alexander Volkov fight. That was more of a favor for the UFC. I think he hopped in early because somebody pulled out of that fight. I believe it was Overeem that pulled out. But Hardy jumps in, shows that he's absolutely not ready for the top of the division, but still goes to a decision against Alexander Volkov, which is still quite, it's not too bad. Just ask Walt Harris. He wasn't able to make it to the third round against Volkov, right? I'm liking the improvements that we're seeing from Hardy. The last time around, though, with him against Maurice Green, things got a little bit shaky for him there because it seemed like once he got Maurice Green down in that first round, he kind of struggled to keep him there, kept him there, but struggled. And it really showed once he got back to his feet and showed how much he was huffing and puffing. Now, cardio has always been a question that we've had about Greg Hardy, especially when he's just going out there and just starching guys in that first round. Then he started, after that Ben Sissoli fight, he started like dragging out these fights, saying, okay, look, I can go 15 minutes and I'll be fine. But this guy in Marcin Tybura is not the guy that you're going to go out there and outpoint for 15 minutes, in my opinion. This is the type of fight he's going to need to take the Maurice Green approach, which is try to get this guy out there within the first round and a half. Otherwise, I'm going to be probably eating shit for the next 7.5 minutes of this fight. I think Marcin Tybura is just better everywhere. If he wants to get this fight to the ground, I think he'll be successful in doing so. That's something that we've seen him successful with in his last couple of fights against Ben Rothwell, especially. That was his fight. I didn't even expect him to get Ben Rothwell down, and he did just that, got him down, did some good work on top, and that was late in the fight. Now, now here with Greg Hardy, I feel like as long as he doesn't get knocked out and starched in that first round, this fight could be easy pickings for him. This could be another potential live betting opportunity as well, because Greg Hardy may look good in that first round, but after that, I think the veterancy, the output, the all-around game of Marcin Tybura is definitely going to be too much here for Hardy. So I get people's play on Hardy in terms of thinking that he's going to go out there and knock this guy out. So I would much rather you guys just play him via KO at plus 135, because that's the best line that you're going to get on him. Otherwise, I like Tybura either by decision at plus 257 is what it's at right now, or even Tybura in round 3 at plus 1450. If Hardy starts sucking wind, or even if he makes it to the third round, it's going to look really, really bad. I think Tybura could absolutely take over there. So I like Tybura in this spot. I think that he's definitely live for a finish late. Even TKO plus 625 for Tybura, plus via TKO after Hardy possibly gasses here. What do you think?
Yeah, honestly, I don't really like, if I was going to take Hardy, I don't care much for chasing that Hardy by KO prop. He's not the power puncher that everybody maybe makes him out to be. He had finished a lot of those early fights by KO. Coming to the UFC, like you see the Ben Sissoli fight. Well, actually, let's start it back to the Alan Crowder fight. He hit Alan Crowder with his best punches and couldn't knock him out, and then gassed out, and then got himself DQ'd because, quite frankly, he was completely gassed out and losing to Alan Crowder. But Crowder took his best punches. That was notable because Crowder hadn't really proven to have some cast iron chin. But then you go to the Ben Sissoli fight, right? Ben Sissoli took all of his best punches. In fact, Greg Hardy didn't even really throw all that many of them. Got himself a no contest because of the puffer. So again, he did get tired. And then Ben Sissoli then goes out to absolutely get annihilated, show absolutely zero MMA skills in said annihilation. And now he's serving 3.5 years in prison in Australia for beating somebody up at a bar. So not exactly a high profile victory. It is a no contest, but it went 3 rounds. The Volkov fight, dude, it's Volkov. We don't talk about that one. Yorgan De Castro, pretty cast iron, only been knocked out once as an amateur. Tough guy. And then the Moraes Green fight, there's no durability there. So yeah, he got back on the in the win column. But here's my biggest thing with Greg Hardy: coming that he has asthma and that he's a late starter into MMA, and that he had got in with American Top Team kind of right at the start. They've all just been like risk management. You know, Dean Thomas, Mike Brown, whoever they got working with him. It's all about risk management. The guy's a freak athlete. He's 6'5". He's an 80-inch reach, and he's a former NFL, you know, legitimate NFL talent. He's probably one of the better athletes heavyweight's going to see, but he has no legitimate skills. And because he has this asthmatic problem, he's getting tired. So it's all about pacing. He's not trying to knock guys out in the first round. And I agree with you saying maybe his best path to victory against Marcin Tybura is, get in his face and try to knock him out. But they realize if Greg goes for it in the first round and doesn't get it, it'll be just like the Alan Crowder fight. And he'll just gas out. He'll be sucking for wind, and it'll be a bad look. So they'd rather fight the same way he fought Volkov. Now, that fight actually headlined the card, and yet his camp was like, we'll do 3 rounds, because they know this guy's not fighting in extended rounds. Maurice Green fight, very interesting. That's the first time Greg Hardy ever completed a takedown in his career, because really, it's switching up the game, you know? Mm-hmm. Risk management. The guy's 6'7". He can't scramble off his back. Take him down, neutralize him. Taking out Maurice Green's one thing. He's kind of chinny. He's been knocked out a bunch of times. Coming out here and being able to knock out Marcin Tybura, Felipe Lins did it in 59 seconds. You know, Shamil Abdurakhimov did it, and Tybura was fat and out of shape and highly unmotivated. It's since then he looks in shape. He looks motivated. He's 3-0 this year. Seeing Jan Blachowicz win the UFC light heavyweight championship has really motivated this guy. Lit a fire under his ass. Even though all his fights are going to decision, he's fighting well, you know, and he's really good at neutralizing guys up the cage. His striking's a little bit quicker. It's a little bit more technical. Would I like to see him strike with Greg Hardy exclusively? No. But whereas Greg Hardy is that freak athlete, the 80-inch reach, Tybura's got a 78-inch reach. He's going to be able to match him largely, but he's got a better gas tank. He's got way more experience in going into deeper waters, and he's just going to neutralize this guy up against the cage and try to flip the script at some point. I'm going to put Tybura for the upset, or I don't know, whatever. It's an even money fight, really. Yeah. But I think the prop you go with here is the over 1.5 at -167, because again, Tybura's last 3 fights, all decision. He realizes that he needs to fight a different type of game plan in order to be successful at the highest level, and he's doing exactly that. He's fighting these slower pace, more boring game plans, but that are leading to a victory. I mean, Greg Hardy, again, there's that perception of just like, dude, 6'5", 265, hits like an absolute brick. If it's like, does he? He hits because he's a very large guy. Yeah, anybody that size probably has a modicum of power in their hands. But is he a legitimate heavy hitter by fighting standards? I don't think so. I just think he's a big guy that's fought in some suspect level of competition. So I got the over 1.5 certainly. That way, even if it was a late finish, I'd still be covered from that standpoint. But my gut tells me over 1.5. My gut tells me it would be fight starts round 3, and then ultimately Tybura by decision prop play, which is big plus money, right?
Yeah, I do want to quickly address this by George. He's saying Hardy also said himself he's not looking to take out Tybura early, but is that really the type of game plan you want to go in there against Tybura, who should be able to beat him pretty much everywhere as long as he doesn't get knocked out? And again, we're kind of dispelling his knockout power as well too on the show. And one thing I do want to note about Greg Hardy and his training camp, he actually left ATT and he's strictly been working with Rashad Evans, and Rashad is pretty much just taking him under his wing and just trying to really pull out the full potential of Greg Hardy. But I'm not sure how far he can really go here. All right, so I like Tybura via decision. You like the over. I think Tybura decision is probably a unanimous prop play for us here. I think that's some solid value. So let's just keep things moving along, though. We got the main card. Well, this is the second fight on the main card now. We got Jillian Robertson against Taila Santos. This was an interesting one because Jillian Robertson was scheduled to fight Andrea Lee on this card, I believe it was, or at least on UFC 256. Lee breaks her nose and has to unfortunately pull out of the fight. Taila Santos, on the flip side, was supposed to fight Montana De La Rosa. De La Rosa posed, I believe, COVID-related. And luckily for them, they're able to just match up with each other a couple weeks later. And I think this is a fun fight. Odds-wise, I believe we're still at pretty much a pick 'em here. Yeah, pretty much a pick 'em with Jillian Robertson as a slight favorite there. The spot that I like the most, and I've already made a play on, this is the under 2.5. I got it at plus 150. I think that I'll always, more often than not, if it's set at 2.5 and it's a Jillian Robertson fight, I'm playing the under 2.5. The girl goes out there, she's either getting the finish herself or she's getting finished. She goes out there, attacks the takedowns as much as she's able to, and then really starts attacking submissions. The issue in her Poliana Battaglia fight, which was her last one, and I whiffed on that under, was Battaglia did absolutely nothing with trying to get back to her feet, because we all know that's where the finishing opportunities come, is when these fighters overextend themselves trying to get themselves back to the feet, get themselves into a better position. But Battaglia was like, I'm fine. I'm good chilling in this full guard. I'm not going to get up. She's not going to be able to submit me. And we pretty much got a stalemate there. And then in the fight before that, Jillian Robertson against Courtney Courtney Casey. Courtney Casey just survives a minute or two too much longer than it should have been at that under 2.5 for that to hit. So I was a little bit bummed with that one not hitting. Here, I like my chances a little bit more. We know what Jillian Robertson's path to victory is. She wants to go out there. She wants to take you down, probably try to submit you. Now with Taila Santos, if she's able to keep this on the feet, she's going to go out there and absolutely start Jillian Robertson on the feet. Robertson is decent on the feet, but we've really shown, or what she's shown is that she just likes throwing these 1 or 2 shots out there, whether it's a front kick, whether it's a jab, whether it's a power shot, whatever it is. But her end game is to get this fight to the ground. She doesn't care whether her jab misses by a mile. She's just throwing it out there to look like she's staying busy, to get you thinking about something else. And then she goes out there, goes for the takedown and tries to, advance position. I love her style. She even said it herself after, I believe she beat Sarah Frota. She goes, I'm a submission over position girl, not a position over submission girl, like most jiu-jitsu players are. So that's the kind of mentality that I like. It's her, it's the Nico Prices, these people that you can kind of just bank on to go out there and either get finished or go for the finish themselves. And even when they're going for the finish, sometimes they overexpose themselves in terms of getting finished here. So I think Taila Santos is definitely live to knock her out. And I do think that Jillian Robertson is live to either pull off a submission or get like a back mount ground and pound, similar to Luis Smoka and Jose Quinones the other week. So in terms of a side, I'm not 100% sure because I can see either side definitely playing out here, but the spot that I like the most is the under 2.5. It's still at good plus money in my opinion, and that's definitely going to be my spot. What about you? How are you feeling for this?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting spot for sure. I think it's definitely one of the closer fights on the card, something I might be interested in passing in. When I look at Taila Santos, I think, geez, you know what? I was probably close to pulling a trigger on a potential Montana De La Rosa play just because I thought wrestling advantage, if she's able to get this fight to the ground, that's the path to victory. We see with Taila Santos, maybe she has some striking advantage, but realistically speaking, she seems like she wants to grapple. I mean, the Barella fight, it gets sprung on her. First pro loss, she had a very ballooned up record, but Mara Barella ends up taking her down and grinding her out and picking up that win. But the Molly McCann fight, I mean, she just reversed the script. She went and took down Molly McCann multiple times, took her down 5 times, was able to just largely control her. So she's interested in grappling. Jillian Robertson's interested in grappling. Jillian Robertson is the bigger, stronger, better wrestler, better grappler. She ends up on top. She's going to give her problems. I just think she's able to replicate it. As far as going out there and taking Jillian Robertson down, maybe, but I don't necessarily. I think it's like you're saying, keep the fight standing and have the superior striking advantage. But like, how good of a striker is she? So here's actually something super notable for you, right? Taila Santos has all these knockout victories, right? So she hasn't knocked out anybody in over 4 years, but the opponent was 0-1. Prior to that, her only knockout victory, 0-0. Prior to that, 0-1. Prior to that, 0-0. Prior to that, a knockout, 0-1. And we got a 1-3. And we got a 0-1. And we got a 0-1. And then Rachel Cummings was 2-1. And so that one's notable because it was the only time that she actually defeated somebody with a winning record by TKO. So it's so balloon. You've just seen the 2 fights in the UFC. It's like, I don't know that she is some credible striker that's going to go out and completely ice Jillian Robertson. If Robertson's able to take her down and end up in top control and just fish these submissions on her, yeah, great. But you know what? I'm going to disagree with the assessment of the inside the distance of the Robertson or just inside the distance in general. The reason why I say that is because when you look at Jillian Robertson back at, say, the Sarah Frota fight, she's really green at that point. So that's the way the brain of a green fighter works. Is just like, oh yeah, bonus hunting. I want to win money. I want to submit people. I want to be exciting. I want the name. And when you're fighting a Sarah Frota, you can get away with that. And when you're fighting some lower level opponents, you can get away with that. And Jillian Robertson had largely fought lower level opponents. And this is where this screws me. The Courtney Casey fight, I take a poke on Jillian Robertson by decision. I got a feeling, Courtney Casey's, her husband's a black belt. She's a brown belt. She's pretty durable. I think she's going to be good enough to last. 28 seconds in the goddamn fight.
Yeah.
And Jillian Robertson gets the submission. And I'm butthurt about it. But you know what I do? I double down the next time out, Jillian Robertson to win by decision over Pauliana Botello. And it's a big fat plus 500 price tag because Jillian Robertson doesn't win these decisions. But here's the thing. She should have won a decision over Courtney Casey. He was 28 seconds off. It really was close to being that decision. But beyond that, it's like I was talking about earlier. The higher level of competition that you're fighting now, it's tougher to put these girls away. She liked submission over position over the Sarah Fraudas of the world. You don't give up good position over elite level fighters. You need to learn how to win. And I think that Jillian Robertson is starting to figure that out, and which is why she's holding them down a little bit. She's maybe taking a little bit less risk. So she goes out there and is able to complete takedowns on Taila Santos, hold down the position, grind out some top control, win some of these later rounds. Then there's a potential that it maybe goes out that over 2.5, or maybe it's Jillian Robertson by decision again. And that I think is for this fight only like plus 245. But again, it's just that narrative that they think, oh, she's either going to finish you or be finished. Now, one thing is that I did initially like Robertson as a potential play, and like, why not? She has seemingly given up a few times in her fights, but She's getting better. She's putting some skills together. But when you're talking about how, oh, geez, Craig Hardy's not at ATT anymore, and he's training with Rashad Evans, and, you know, is that good for him? Is that bad for him? Not having the bodies, not having the total game plan. Robertson's not at ATT anymore either. You know, she's with Dean Thomas, but her and Dean Thomas have effectively left and went to North Carolina. Now she spent a little bit of time at Wonder Boy's camp, but like she's not working with Wonder Boy, and Chris Weidman's there, but she's not working with Chris Weidman. When you're at ATT, you're working with Joanna, you're working with, you know, Tisha Torres, there's such a long cast of top level fighters at ATT, you know, that there's just, it's bodies galore and training partners galore. So how does that affect Robertson? I'm not entirely sure. This is probably a pass for me, but I got a feeling that it's probably going to hit overs instead of just being like surefire inside the distance kind of bet.
One thing I do want to touch on is we're talking about Taila Santos's ballooned record, and I was just kind of scrolling through the Astro Fight Team's topology here, and there's one name that really like jumps out to me. I think you know him. I'm not sure if some of our guys in here will know. Julio Cesar Neves, if you remember him, he's a 35-1 record. How he's never made it to the UFC. I think he fought in Bellator a couple times, but he's 35-1. Other products from this camp are Glyco Franca, who's 22-6, Eric Silva, 22-7. Like there are guys, even another one that's in the UFC currently, Alex Leco de Silva. He came in 21-2, I think it was. And now he's 21-3. You know what I mean? So there are definitely some very sketchy guys that fought at Astra. Darren Till also fought at Astra too, but you know, not spending most of his time over there anymore. So that's something that people should know about Astra Fight Team. That's all I've ever heard about them, is that they like to go out there and pad their guys' records against these 0-1s, 1-1s, 2-1s, and it's kind of worked out for the most part, but we'll see how far Taila Santos can actually take this damn thing. All right, let's move on to a high level fight here, one that I'm very, very excited for. Marlon Moraes, Magic Marlon Moraes, going up against Rob Font. I'm seeing a lot of differing opinions on this fight. We got -150 on Marlon Moraes, +130 on Rob Font. Personally, I'm picking Rob Font to win. However, I'm just not the most confident in it. Again, another plus money spot that I'm just not confident actually pulling the trigger. Alex Morono being the other one that I was talking about earlier in this podcast. But here with Rob Font, the blueprint is kind of already been put out there for Marlon Moraes. Go out there, outpoint this guy, kind of put the pressure on him, and then maybe finish him late or just pull away with the decision if you're able to win at least 2 rounds here. But let's not forget who Marlon Moraes is. Like when he goes out there and finishes dudes, looks like one of the best 135ers in the world. That's what made him so appealing before he came to the UFC. And even while he's in the UFC, he still goes out there and has spectacular highlight reel finishes, like Aldo being one of them. Probably one of the craziest knee type finishes that we've ever seen in the UFC. It's so hard to bet against Marlon Moraes because I haven't really truly seen Rob Font go out there and implement a style that would go well against Marlon Moraes. Like he's not a Corey Sandhagen. Corey Sandhagen is a guy that just throws from such weird angles and awkward positions, a very unorthodox type of striker that kind of really caught Marlon Moraes off guard. And then obviously that finishing sequence with that spinning heel kick, which rocked him, and then he followed up with some ground and pound there. I'm not sure if Rob Font's really just capable of doing that type of exact game plan. He could go out there and outpoint Marlon Moraes, but Moraes is still dangerous. Like he still shows, even in that Jose Aldo fight, a lot of people think that Jose Aldo won that fight. I went back and rewatched it. I still think Marlon Moraes deserved that victory, but he's still able to go out there and have good performances. It seems more often than not when he's successful, it's him getting the finish, not him usually going to a decision. So whenever fights do go to a decision, it gets a little bit fishy for him, especially later in the fights. But the tricky fights for him are the ones that are scheduled for 5 rounds. This one's just a 3-rounder. He just needs to go out there, bank 2 rounds if he's not able to finish Rob Font, who has had trouble against a guy like Rafael Sunsao in the past, who isn't that high volume of a striker either. The guy goes out there, finds his shots, lands the good shots, drops Rob Font a couple times, gets the decision victory. If Moraes goes out there and drops him a couple times, he could get a decision victory as well if he's not able to secure a finish. But I'm still, for some damn reason, I'm still leaning to the side thinking that Rob Font's going to be able to go out there and I'll point him at plus 265 for Font to win via decision. I think that's one of my better props are like, or even the over 2.5 at -130 is not too bad of a spot to cover a Marlon Moraes decision victory as well too. So this one has me a little bit stumped. I'm going with the underdog. Not 100% sure if I'm going to be playing it. With that said, my favorite prop would be Font via decision at plus 265. How about yourself?
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I think Rob Font. The one question mark for me is that he's been off a year, and I think he's 33 years old. So it's not one of these guys that like I'm salivating to see the improvements. I think there could be definitely some sound improvements out of him. But again, this is a big spot for him. He needs to go there and he needs to soundly put a beating on Marlon Moraes if he's going to establish himself at the top end of this division and get some of those marquee name fights. Bantamweight is murder's row. You need to beat these guys to move on. And it's so talented that it makes a guy like Marlon Moraes, who was once everybody's darling, who's once, a minus 165 favorite over Henry Cejudo, to become the Bantamweight champion of the world. People love Marlon Moraes. And then since then, you got a couple bad beats and it's like everyone's all of a sudden against you. But that's how fast the sport moves. And with Marlon Moraes, one has to wonder if it's not just like a recency bias about how good this guy was on that run of that first round finishes, beating Aljamain Sterling. Man, who beats Aljamain Sterling? And who knocks out Aljamain Sterling? And who does it in 1 minute and 7 seconds? The Jimmy Rivera fight, like nobody knocks out Jimmy Rivera, especially with a head kick 33 seconds into the fight. Rafael Assunção, that was the rematch because he had lost to him in his debut. And it's just like, go out there and submit a guy like Rafael Assunção, a high-level BJJ black belt. It's like, there is a lot to like about Marlon. And is losing to Corey Sandhagen and Henry Cejudo sandwiched in with a win over Jose Aldo, is that a bad stretch? Is that bad by no means? It's not. It's just the way and the manner in which he is fighting. I mean, he used to fight 5 rounds in World Series of Fighting and have no issues. But now it's like gas tank is largely a problem for him. Like he's getting tired in the second round. He's getting tired in the third round. Then against Corey Sandhagen, he's taking on the young lion who's faster than him, more mobile, longer, likes to stay to the outside, likes to work a little bit. He decided to switch up his game plan. He didn't want to get tired tracking him. So he didn't throw anything. He looked really gun shy. He just kind of allowed Corey Sandhagen to dictate the pace. And as a result, Corey Sandhagen found a rhythm and got comfortable and then teed off on him, beat him up. And he tells him at one point during the fight, like, I broke your eye socket, and then I broke your orbital, he tells him, which is the eye socket. And then just like puts it on him some more. It's just like, man, that's 2 months ago. And Marlon Moraes is back in the ring. So what's better, getting absolutely pillar to post washed out 2 months ago or taking a year off? Like, yeah, I'd probably rather take the year off. So Font's going to be fresh. I think he fights longer. I think he's got way better output. Again, Marlon Moraes is one of these guys that is a very deadly striker. But when you look at his numbers for what it is, that Corey Sandhagen fight, we're into the second round. He's landed 14 strikes. The Jose Aldo fight, he gassed out after the second round. You're right, by the way, and I had Marlon bet. But take that bias aside, he won the fight. He won the first round handily. I thought he won the first round for sure. The second round's closer, but he went. Like, he loses a round. He started to get tired in that fight. But I do agree that he should have won. The problem is that, just by the numbers, he outstruck Jose Aldo 59-58. It wasn't exactly like it was a runaway victory over a guy in Jose Aldo that, again, people thought was washed. The Henry fight, the first round, he looks amazing. And then after that, it's like he gasses out. He doesn't end up throwing a ton in that fight as the later the fight progresses. You even go back to the John Dodson fight, right? The John Dodson fight, he just stares at him the whole time. Nothing happens. There's a strong argument John Dodson won that fight.
Yeah.
But it's like all the same. It's like either he knocks you out in a minute and it's on the highlight reel and you'll remember it forever and it was badass, or it's like he runs out of ideas after the first 5 minutes. So I'm thinking it's not that I have anything against him, and it's not that I'm a huge Rob Font guy. I don't mind that dog money on Rob Font. I think there's a legitimate path to victory there, and I think he's just got to stay to the outside and outstrike him. My one worry would be that I truthfully think that Marlon Moraes will probably try to take him down. I think he's trying to use his wrestling a little bit more in these spots. But with Rob Font, if you give me that same version that I got against Ricky Simon, let Marlon take me down. Yeah. I don't care. Rob's just going to get back up. He's also a BJJ black belt. He's going to be a little more sound, a little more technical. And then the last thing I want to throw out, I always say that, but for this fight, this is COVID situations, right? So a lot of these guys are not doing their camps at their regular spots, right? And we talked about Jillian Robertson and Greg Hardy on this card. Jacare Souza, he stopped training at good gyms a while ago and has just been hanging in Orlando. Like, that's all not good. You got Marlon Moraes, who was, he was with Mark Henry and the crew in New York and spending time with Nick Catones in New Jersey and just got no, man, he's back in South Florida at like the Armory. He's not at ATT. He's not at, Sanford MMA. He's not at MMA Masters, the 3, mega gyms of South Florida. He's just, living a little cheaper, hanging in Florida. Like, I don't want to say 1 foot on his way out, but he's being better with his money as if he sees the end of the tunnel is at some point. Whereas, again, Rob Font, like, this is a huge spot for him. So I don't want to give you the impression I'm super confident on either side. I'm going to take the dog slot in here on Rob Font. I think Rob Font can get the job done by decision, and you nailed that one as well. And then the last shout out, I will say, I didn't come up with this idea as well. I should, I know someone tweeted to me, and I should have their name out of respect, give them the little kudos, but I can't remember. But they did make mention Rob Font on a 3rd round TKO, which Rob Font's not really a knockout guy. His last knockout win is over what's his name, Thomas Almeida, which is like,
Yeah.
just doesn't really move his head at all. But with Marlon, maybe there is that idea that he is a little shot born and he does get massively tired in the third round. And the Rob Font by third round TKO prop was, give it to me, Moraes, Font, no, that's submission. Font by second round knockout is plus 1,200. Where's Font third round knockout? Font third round knockout is plus 1,400, right? So I'm not sitting here telling you this is going to lock, but again, like, just like, you know, my Twitter, whoever it was, shout out to you. You know who you are. You're onto something. It's like, is there a possibility that 1 in 14 times Marlon maybe does get real tired in the third round and Rob Font puts it on him and catches something? Absolutely. That's one of those really long props that we might see you put on at the end of the show because you are the long prop master.
We'll see.
But, you know, like, it's not like a 3-1, a 4-1. I like those kind of props, 5-1, 6-1, like 14-1. It's like, it certainly seems like worth a smidget if you are taking Rob Font. If you're not, then take the fight goes the distance. And I would say Font by decision, just like you were saying, is something that I'm definitely interested in.
Kind of like the Morono and Pettis fight. I like the Moraes in round 1 at plus 440 or Font via decision at plus 265. So that's kind of the way that I'm approaching it. I'm not sure if I'll 100% put any money on it, but that's the way that I'm looking at this fight. All right, let's keep it going. We got 3 fights left for the night. This next one should be absolute chaos. We got Khaos Williams going up against Michel Pereira. Relatively short turnaround here for Khaos Williams, who just knocked out Abdul Razak Al Hassan. You expect him to get back into the cage relatively quickly after only putting in about 30 seconds of work that night. And then Michel Pereira is coming off, I believe that's the Lima and Madaya fight, where he looked pretty freaking good. He looked like the Michel Pereira you would hope to see. A guy that goes out there, does this flashy stuff, but still has the cardio in the third round to go out there and sketchy finish. I'm not sure if you looked that one up recently again, but that was one of those ones where Pereira knocked him down, I believe it was, followed up with the rear naked choke, no hooks in or anything like that. And it looked like Zalim was going out there and try to pull the arms off and attack the joint. And that's where the referee, I want to get that referee's name correct. I feel like it was Chris Tione. Yep, it was Chris Tione, the infamous Chris Tione of this Apex era. He thought Zalim Madaev was tapping, so they stopped the fight. He absolutely was not tapping. But regardless, we knew that Michel Pereira was going to win that fight, so it wasn't too bad of a stoppage. The only reason you're mad is if you have Michel Pereira to win via decision, you get robbed of that by a slip up by the referee there. But that's the type of Michel Pereira people want to see, is a guy that's able to stay composed enough to keep his cardio in check for a 3-round fight. Now, he didn't really deal with much of an opposition here with Zalim, who just seemed way too gun shy, didn't really want to take the chance and kind of come forward. The only time he really came forward is when Michel Pereira was kind of just calling him on. But Pereira looked great in that fight, in my opinion. I thought he showed a great full arsenal in terms of a couple takedowns. Mainly his striking looked really good too. He's very quick too. The guy's very, very explosive. He looked just as good in the Dhiego Sanchez fight, but a lot of people expected him to get him out of there, not illegally, but still expected him to get the finish in that fight. But I'm liking this Pereira that we're seeing, a guy that seems calm, cool, and collected, but is still able to be flashy and throw a spinning shit and be effective and pull off a decision victory if he needs to. In this fight against Khaos Williams, I'm still on that fade Khaos Williams train, just as I was against Abdul Razak Al Hassan. But here I'm taking a little bit of a step back. The spot that I like the most, honestly, is actually the over 1.5 at minus 125. I think that we're going to see Pereira do his spinning shit and do, his shtick, and we'll see Khaos Williams kind of just evade most of those shots. And Khaos, again, his path to victory always comes down to that very one small thing where he needs one specific scenario to kind of work out, which is him going for getting the knockout, landing that one punch that's going to put his opponent out. And I feel like that's going to be a lot trickier here against a guy like Michel Pereira, who moves as well as he does, is as big as he is too, might be able to keep his chin out of the way, hopefully, from those big bombs of Khaos Williams. And I would much prefer going with the Michel Pereira route here, knowing that he has to just throw more, which is what he always does anyway, compared to Khaos Williams actually landing that one thing that he needs to get the victory here. So I like the over 1.5 at minus 125 for Pereira. I even like Pereira via decision at plus 350. I think that's a solid spot as well too. It wouldn't shock me if he gets the finish, but we haven't seen Khaos, really be finished or even getting into that type of trouble yet. So that's what leaves me a little questionable about Pereira's finishing ability in this fight. So I'm going to go with the over 1.5 at minus 125. I think that's a solid spot. What about yourself?
Yeah, no, honestly, I agree. I think Michel Pereira is the pick in this spot. He showed a well-rounded skill set. Now, he's got very questionable ring IQ. No doubt about that. The guy might go out there, he might throw some spinning, kick. He might throw a backflip type kick. He might try all this wacko stuff. He break dances during his entry. He's dancing the whole way down to the ring. It's a lot of shenanigans. It's a lot of theatrics. It's a lot of stuff that you don't like to see. But as far as his meat and potatoes skill set goes, yeah, dude, he's honestly pretty technically sound, because wrestling is not the most technical, but he's very strong. Listen, he's fighting at 170 pounds, but he's fought at 185. He's fought at 205, and he fought in Korea at catchweights of 220 against open weight fighters. Like, he's a very, very strong guy. So when he decides that he wants to wrestle you, more times than not, he's able to get these guys at the ground. His jiu-jitsu, like, he's staying out of harm's way. He's doing a fairly good job. And it's when he paces himself and when he conserves himself, dude, he does got gas in the tank. Now, keep in mind the Tristan Connolly fight, which I was on Tristan Connolly, so I did not get fooled by Michel Pereira. I knew who he was, but it was the theatrics was going to catch up to him. And in that spot, it did catch up to him. But he also missed weight in that spot, right? So according to him, he's like, dude, my body was shutting down. I had no coaching staff, nobody helping me cut weight, bad weight cut, lost to Tristan Connolly. Him taking the Dhiego fight, his cardio looked good. His skill set looked good. Now it's against Dhiego. Everybody looks good against Dhiego. And he did ultimately get himself disqualified with a knee to the face that he did not need to do. So it's bad ring IQ. But the skills checked out, man. He was cruising on him in that fight. But it's Dhiego, right? So then you look at the next fight, and it's like that's where you start to see it. Lima Mdaev is 0-2 in the UFC, and he's lost to Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts, and is not giving a good account of himself. And the clearly big grappling advantage for Michel Pereira, but it's like, man, he pieced him up striking. Lima Mdaev is supposed to be a really good technical boxer. Pereira looked good all over. His cardio looked good. And listen, I did have Pereira by decision. I did get screwed by Chris Dione with 21 seconds left in the fight on a non-tap. But like, I couldn't be mad because it's like he kicked his ass so cleanly that entire time up until then. And then when he tossed him in the ground, he didn't tap, but that choke is deep. Yeah. So like 21 seconds is a lifetime when you've got Michel Pereira kind of ripping your neck off. So as far as his prospects of winning decisions, yeah, no, I think he can win decisions. You look at his body of work, and there's a ton of finishes. Don't let that give you the idea that it's like, no, he has to finish or nothing. This guy is capable of going to decision. And with Khaos Williams, like, yeah, it's interesting. See, does he have a good chin? I don't know. I never really seen him get hit. Does he have good submission defense? Like, I don't know. I never really seen anybody try to submit him. Is his takedown defense good? Like, has he ever taken any, actually good wrestlers? Like, no. There's a lot of just like, what if? So he's never been knocked out. He's never been finished. He has one loss. This is interesting. He lost just 2 years ago to Dan Yates. Dan Yates might have the biggest set of balls of all times. His MMA debut was against Khaos Williams. He defeated him. His second pro fight, he took on Devin Smith, who lost to Brock Weaver on Contender Series, right? So it's like the guy was 7-1 and ended up getting a Contender Series. And then his third pro fight, he fought Joe Riggs, who had something like 70 fights, and then just quietly never fought again. It's only like 2 years ago, but like, buddy, what are you doing?
Yeah,
a local Michigan guy, tough as shit. And you know what? He went out there and he out-toughed Khaos Williams. Now, this one is more notable to me, is that you rewatch Khaos Williams versus Tony Hervey. Most people don't know who Lionheart is. You obviously do. Yep. Tony Hervey's been around 10 times over, right? It's not a decisive victory for him, like this. Again, the fight's it's 2019. It's a year and a half ago. And he gets really tired the later that fight goes, and Tony Hervey works his way back in. I got Tony Hervey on Facebook now, and Same. He's talking shit. And he's saying, and he's like, I want that fight. I want that rematch. It's like, bro, you're 17-20. Yeah. You're not fighting Khaos Williams. I can assure you that. And he's like adamant that's like, yo, I beat that guy's ass. Now, shout out to Tony Hervey because he's fought in his career Canadians, Jesse Gross, Curtis Demars, George Brito, honorary Canadian, he's actually born in Brazil, Mike Ricci, Jesse Ronson, Brad Cardinal, Shane Campbell. Like, dude, we know Tony Hervey because he was from Michigan and more than willing to come down to do the dance.
Yeah.
But like, he's almost 40 years old now. He is not training full time anymore. He has a kid. He's a single father and just kind of sticks to himself, and was in a really competitive fight with Khaos Williams a year and a half ago. Now, Khaos comes to the UFC and he blasts Morono, who we're picking over Anthony Pettis, and then blasts Abdul Razak Al-San, who, like, was a 3-1 favorite or something. Like, people all loved him. He's got the skills, but I don't know why. But regardless, those two quick knockouts, like, does that make you the man? Like, is he all of a sudden the man? Is he all of a sudden a near even money favorite over Michel Pereira, who's got like 30 pro fights and at least fought in some decent guys and given a good account of himself and seems to have skills all over? Like, I don't know. It's a tough sell. So I got Pereira to win this fight. I got the over 1.5, which was
-130, I believe.
Yeah, -130 for the over 1.5. Like, I like that a lot. Like, Pereira's not icing guys. I mean, he can ice you in the first round, but again, he's learned his lesson and he's pacing himself a bit. And with Khaos, he's been icing guys so fast that there's just this idea that there's no way this gets out of the first round, right?
Yeah.
But on fights that, you guarantee a knockout, Dana White used to be infamous for. He had like a run of like 6 or 7. He was like, I guarantee this ain't going to the judges' scorecards. And it's like Wanderlei versus Chuck. Yeah, it probably won't go. And it does. There was a curse for a long time where it's just like, man, these fights that you assume are going to be fireworks are not necessarily always going to be like that. Pereira goes out there. His best path to victory, go out there, take Khaos Williams down right off the hop, stay on top of him for 5 minutes. When the second round starts, let me know if that death touch is still there, because I got a feeling he's going to be a lot more tired. Like he probably, his power is going to translate best in the first 3-4 minutes, right? So like extend him out, take him into the deeper waters. And when we see when Pereira is in deeper waters, he's able to swim still. If he had not illegally kneed Dhiego, he could have just cleanly, legitimately finished him. He could have. Mm-hmm. And had he not, well, I don't know. I mean, maybe Tyone or not, it looked like he was really starting to put that pressure on Zelim late and looking for that finish. You could see the same thing here. If Khaos gets tired, he's in trouble. If Khaos doesn't get tired but keeps getting taken down, he's in trouble. And if it's a pure striking battle, striker versus striker, one guy's got hellacious power, we think. We've seen twice, but, certainly seems to have the goods. And one guy's got tremendous power, only he'll smash you with his knee, he'll smash you with his elbow, he'll smash you with a spinning wheel kick. He's been training this camp, he's spending time with Johnny Walker. Like, why? I don't know. But all the same, you get what I'm saying. Like, he's an anomaly, but like there is something there. He's not just a joker. He's not just a goof. Like he does have a legitimate skill set. So I'm going to take Pereira in what is surely going to be fight of the night, right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to take that over 1.5. And I like where your head's at with that Pereira by decision plus money prop.
One thing that I like that you touched on is the experience difference here. He literally has 3 times the amount of experience that Khaos Williams has. So I'm pretty certain that Michel Pereira has seen a Khaos Williams 1 or 2 times staring across the cage from him. So yeah, I think we're both in agreement with Michel. I feel like when we do talk about fights that are bound to not go to the distance, I always think about Francis Ngannou and Derek Lewis. That's one that always sticks out in my head. Always a thorn in the back of my ass. I had a huge parlay with that being the only one that did not hit, and that had the worst odds on the parlay as well too. So that one really killed me. But we both like Michel. We like the over, and Michel via decision is probably the best spots there. All right, let's get on to the co-main event here. We got Jose Aldo taking on an up-and-comer at this point in time, and Marlon Vera, who's established himself in the UFC, coming off probably the biggest win in his career against Sean O'Malley. But when you really look at that fight, get a little bit sketchy. My assessment of the fight, to be honest, is it seemed like Marlon Vera, whether people want to say that he stayed calm, in my opinion, he looked like he was a little bit hesitant and nervous in terms of what was coming his way. Sean O'Malley did a good job of staying active enough with his kicks, throwing something out there to continuously, keep Marlon Vera on the tip of his toes. But once Marlon Vera recognized that Sean O'Malley's foot was hurt, that's when he started to put the foot on the gas. That's when he started to go for the kill. Leading up into that point, it seemed like he had absolutely nothing. Now, if you're showing that type of hesitancy against a guy like Sean O'Malley, what kind of hesitancy is he going to show up against a guy like Jose Aldo? We know Marlon Vera is a notorious slow starter. You don't want to be a slow starter against Jose Aldo. The question about Jose Aldo ever since he came down to 135 pounds is, how is he going to look? How's his cardio going to look? Is it going to hold up? It held up in the Marlon Moraes fight. He was still the one in that third round moving forward, throwing shots. It didn't hold up as much in that Petr Yan fight, but that's a 5-round fight. That's a fight where he gets finished in the 5th round. Had a very successful second round against Petr Yan. Got all the judges' scorecards in that round. Went out there and utilized his lead leg kick just as effectively as prime Jose Aldo did back in the WEC days. But then, unfortunately for Jose Aldo, Petr Yan just as comfortable in his secondary stance as he is in his primary, and goes out there and absolutely starches Jose Aldo. Now, I think that there is recency bias definitely baked into this. You got Marlon Vera coming off that Sean O'Malley victory, and you got Jose Aldo coming off a Petr Yan ass whooping. But we're talking about levels of competition here. You know what I mean? There's no way you can go out there and tell me that Petr Yan or Marlon Vera can replicate a Petr Yan type of game plan. There's no way you're telling me that Marlon Vera is going to go out there and replicate a Max Holloway type of fight. There's no way that's going to happen. And this is a 3-round fight. And although Aldo lost his 3-round fight against Marlon Moraes, he showed in that fight that he could still be a high-level fighter. He still has, I think Rogan was even talking about it. Like, it looks like Jose Aldo's back to his normal self from back in the WEC days, but more aggressive and more willing to exchange in these firefights, which is why he's getting finishes over Renato Moicano. And Jeremy Stephens going into that fight as a dog when everybody was counting him out, saying he's done, he's shot, there's no way he's coming back, still goes out there and gets some solid knockout victories. Now, I think here with Chito Vera, I think people are putting way too much stock into Vera getting that victory over Sean O'Malley, I should say. I always get fucked up with that Shane thing. But either way, Sugar Shane. Well, Marlon here, yeah, he's getting better on a fight-to-fight basis. But I truly think Aldo is definitely live to get the finish here. I could think like those body shots that Jose Aldo still rips could put down a horse, I believe. I think he definitely still has a ton of power left. And I think if he still goes out there and kind of replicates his performance against Petr Yan in terms of throwing the leg kicks, I think that could be very effective here, as I don't think that Marlon Vera is as effective in his secondary stance as he is in his primary stance, kind of like Petr Yan was. So I'm kind of mystified as to why this line is as close as it is. I personally thought that Jose Aldo was going to be like minus 200, minus 220 here, because from what I've seen in his past couple fights, outside of getting finished by Petr Yan, who again, champion, high-level guy, Jose Aldo's still going out there and putting on good performances. Like he doesn't seem like he's lost much of a step from his 145 days. Like at 135, he still looks good. He looks motivated. He's being forced to be disciplined and motivated by making this 135-pound division on a fight-to-fight basis. So yeah, I get maybe they're on different trajectories, but I still believe that Jose Aldo is much higher at this point in time than Marlon Vera ever is. And Jose Aldo, 34 years old. Usually that is seen as a fighter's prime time, between the ages of 30 to, you could stretch it to 35 if you want. If the fighter's really good, you can stretch it to 35. But Jose Aldo, I truly believe he's still live for solid performances. So the line that I like the most here is Jose Aldo. Obviously, minus 150 is a gift of a line in my opinion, but we're here for props. Jose Aldo to win via KO plus 555. I think that's very live here, especially if he gets at Marlon Vera nice and early, chops those legs down, and really starts to open up his punches, whether it's to the body or to the head. I truly don't see how Marlon Vera truly deals with that type of power and pressure from a great, in my opinion, a still great in Jose Aldo. How do you see this fight?
Yeah, I agree, right? I think you go back to the recency bias. One guy's on a decline, best days are behind him. You know, is he shop worn? Is he this? Can he make 135? Although, because his last 2 times making 135, he's only 2 times. He has looked phenomenal. But yeah, I think you talk about just like levels for this and back class, and it's like who you've been fighting. And if you took Marlon Vera and you mashed him up against Petr Yan, he'd get starched. If you gave him Marlon Moraes, I don't know, it might be a little more competitive, but I don't think he wins. Him versus Alexander Volkanovski, like what world does that ever get booked? Him versus Renato Moicano. You mean Renato Moicano, who fights at 155 pounds, is a very large man. Jeremy Stevens, you know, the hardest hitting 45er in the division. You knock guys down, I knock them out. Max Holloway, like, do you think that Marlon Chito Vera is going to go out there and fight Max Holloway? No. So if he had fought any of the guys that Jose Aldo had fought, he'd be on this long run as well. If Jose Aldo, to flip the script, was fighting Wu Buren, Guido Canetti, Frankie Saenz, Nolene Hernandez, Andre Ewell, Song Yadong, which he lost, and Sean O'Malley, he would look like WEC Aldo, icing guys in the first round and absolutely cruising. So one guy's maybe looking a little suspect against the best guys in the world, and one guy's been losing first rounds against the worst guys in the division, but then does rally back and win. And so that's the problem with Marlon Chito Vera, right? It's not just the Sean O'Malley fight. It's almost all of his fights. He lost the first round to Wu Buren. He lost the first round to Guido Canetti. The first round when versus Andre Ewell was competitive, but he lost the first round against Song Yadong, and he's well on his way to losing the first round against Sean O'Malley. He's not doing anything. He's just staring, waiting for it to happen. Now, this is nothing new to Marlon Vera because he does do that all the time. He's got this tendency to maybe stare a little bit in that first round, and then in the second round, he starts to feel himself. He starts to become alive. He is hittable. You hit him a few times. It wakes him up. In the third round, you're starting to suck air, and he is on you trying to put you away, and, you know, that's him. When he's taking on Guido Canetti and Wu Buren, he does get that third round finish. When he's taking on Song Yadong, if he's fighting in a 2-0 hole coming into the third, maybe the finish doesn't translate. It just so happens that Sean O'Malley busted his own leg. Sean O'Malley had done that same thing prior in the Andre Sukmantath fight. Maybe it's just something that Sean O'Malley does. But that win is a big underdog win. And the people that bet Marlon Vera were like, I told you so, dog. It's like, told me what? Well, I said he was going to win. It's like, did you expect him to win like that? Like, he was well on his way to losing the first round, and the other guy hurt his own leg. Yeah, but he knocked him out on the ground. Yeah, but the fight wouldn't have hit the ground if the guy wouldn't have busted his own leg. So I don't know. Like, I can't fully give Marlon Vera just like that full feather on the cap that he's turned the corners with. Jose Aldo, I didn't think he was going to be all that competitive in his 35-pound debut against Marlon Moraes. And listen, like we agreed earlier, I thought he lost, but he gave a good enough account of himself and looked tremendous on the scales. And his cardio actually checked out. And then against Petr Yan, it's like, it's really competitive through 2, maybe 3 rounds, and then he gets cooked. This is a 3-round fight. If Aldo looked really good his last 2 fights at Bantamweight, if he gives you that same version, he's going to win the first round. Everybody does against Chito. In the second round, he's not going to quite gas out as quick as you think, like we are talking about the Yan fight. Like, second round's his best round. And then the third round, if he does gas out, Chito Vera's not knocking him out. You know why? Because it took Yan all the way to the 5th minute. It took Max Holloway, the most hellacious beating of all times. Alexander Volkanovski never caught a whiff in 15 minutes. Like, you don't just go out there and knock Jose Aldo like Conor McGregor. You're not Conor McGregor. You're not just going to catch him with that clean shot. It's a fight game. Anything can happen. I'm just saying with Jose Aldo, there's a lot of like, oh, remember that one time? Remember that one? It's like, dude, it's always the highest level of the mountain. So I'm going to agree. I think that Jose Aldo, as far as the money line, it seems to make sense. As far as the props I like on this, the over 2.5 is -190. The fight goes the distance. Please check this for me, by the way, because you got it open. Over 2.5 is -190, right? The fight goes the distance is -195. How's that possible? How's that possible?
That's crazy. That's got to be an error.
It has to be an error, right? It has to be an error.
Yeah.
There's no way that the under 2.5 or the over 2.5 is a better price than the fight goes the distance.
Yeah.
By 5 points. But regardless, if fight goes the distance, if you were to get a better price, then I like that. And then furthermore, I would take Jose Aldo to win by decision, which is +150. So it's a better price than that -150 on the money line. But we agree. We got Jose Aldo. He is a potent finisher. Marlon Vera hasn't fought the guys to that level, but Marlon Vera has a cast iron chin. He has never been knocked out. He has fought 3 rounds with John Lineker. He has been chin checked. He's taken it. His submission defense is solid. He's a very tough, very durable individual. He's tricky. He knows how to evade when he needs to. He is hittable at the same time. And he's one of these guys that brings it on late. And so honestly, bring it on late. Maybe win the 3rd round, best case scenario for Marlon Vera, but loses this 29-28 to Jose Aldo. But I don't think Jose Aldo is the first man to knock out Marlon Vera. He's not going to submit Marlon Vera. Therefore, I got the over 2.5. Wow, I don't know. Let's see them fix the price. But either the over 2.5 or the fight goes the distance, depending on what they're going to line it for me. And then sure enough, Jose Aldo by decision +150. Take a shot on that.
Now, one thing I wanted to address before we move on to the main event here is a lot of people are trying to put a correlation between Ferguson's performance last weekend to Aldo this weekend, saying 2 guys, veterans were at the top of their divisions. Now they're fighting up and comers. We saw Charles Oliveira go out there and absolutely dominate Tony Ferguson over 3 rounds. And for me to think that the Justin Gaethje beating having an effect on Tony Ferguson would have had an effect on him durability wise, where his chin probably wouldn't have been as good. But we didn't really get to see that. We saw Charles Oliveira go out there and out jiu-jitsu him for a solid 3 rounds. Now here with Jose Aldo and Marlon Vera, like if Marlon Vera goes out there and knocks out Jose Aldo, then we can say, okay, there's a bit of a correlation with him taking that hellacious beating to Petr Yan. What's your feeling in terms of like thinking that, what we saw happening with Ferguson possibly happening the same thing with Aldo? Do you think that there's any type of correlation or anything that we should take from that?
No, I don't think so. On one hand, you could make the argument that he's taken a lot of damage in his career, and especially taken all of the damage in his career has come within like the last 6 fights, right? The last maybe more than that. Well, I guess since McGregor knocked him out, but then after that, the Max fight is 3 rounds of just an absolute. Listen, he started well early, but again, once he fades, he got thrashed. And Max Holloway the second time, I don't know why they rebooked that fight. Makes no sense to me. But they did him no service. He got thrashed.
It was Frank Edgar that was supposed to fight him that night.
All right, there you go. Okay, that makes sense. He's stepping in on a short notice, but it just, to me, it was like a rematch I did not care to see again, and he took a very bad beating. But so here's the benefit, right? He just took 3, or he got knocked out by McGregor, and then the 2 fights with Holloway, he shot to bits, right? But he looked great against Jeremy Stephens. He looked great against Nato Moicano. There was no that missing step. The Volkanovski fight, it is what it is. Did take some damage. The Marlon fight, you don't see. He looks great at 135. Where was the hard weight cut? This guy used to struggle mightily to make 145. Yeah. Now he's making 135 later in his career, and he has cardio problems. Where are they there? Where's the accumulated damage in that fight? Marlon's knocking everybody out in the first round. He looks like an absolute slayer of dragons, and yet, no. Jose looked more than fine with him. And then Petr Yan is, my opinion, the best 35er on the planet.
Easily.
And it's a lot of damage, but again, Jose Aldo is not one to just show up in terrible shape, like he's not one to show up and all of a sudden just be like a diminished version of himself. And I go back to Edson Barbosa, fellow Brazilian, as a prime example. Edson Barbosa's taken more thrashings than almost anybody When he wins, he kills guys. Yeah. When he loses, he has taken some absolute drubbings in his career. And then the next time you see him, it's like as fast as he always was. Chin's as good as it always was. Like, there's guys that are born for combat. They're all about this life. Jose Aldo's born for this. He was fighting when it was for free in a favela in a pair of board shorts. He's achieved the highest peak of the mountain, but he's one of these guys that doesn't say, geez, I got $1 million and I don't want to get up early in the morning. Like, he's got a chip on his shoulder. He's got something to prove. And you see any of the interviews with him, he's just highly motivated. And to hear, it's ludicrous, but to hear him talk about getting another title shot, it's like, Jose, what are you doing? But you need to have that mentality if you're going to do this. You have to believe I can beat all these guys. You have to believe, dude, that second round with Peter Yan, my mistake. I made a couple of issues, but I could do that for 5. Give me another shot at him. You have to have that belief. And that belief is the reason why he took the second fight with Max Holloway. You have to have that belief. Jose has that belief. He's going to come out here. He's going to be motivated. He's got to secure those first two rounds. The first round's a dead giveaway. Yeah. So live betting this fight's not going to be good because the price after round 1 on Aldo is not going to be good. And unless you're a Marlon Vera backer, then yeah, let him give up the first round. Maybe hope he backs into it. So Aldo's got to make sure he secures that second round as well. And if he does, it's going to be hard for Vera to put him away in the third, and he should be able to pick up that decision. So, yeah, I got Jose Aldo. And even though he's taking that damage, as you mentioned, I think I'm going to go with he's not quite that super shock-worn guy yet. He's still only 34 years old. I think he's still got a couple good moments left in him. And the UFC's giving him a fight that could produce a fun, exciting fight and a potential good moment for him.
He definitely needs this win, at least for his confidence alone. But it's a big fight for both guys. For Aldo to know that he still has it, and for Vera to finally get that breakthrough win that he's kind of been looking for. The O'Malley win's great and all that, but we know that there's an asterisk around that for sure. All right, before we get into the main event here, please, if you guys are watching, we got 235 live viewers right now. Hit that like button right now so we can get into the algorithm and keep the show going. As always, it's a great turnout every time, even afterwards, the post view results and all that stuff. You guys are absolutely killing it. So shout out to everybody that joins us every Thursday evening. And now this is the last one. This is the last Thursday that we're doing it until 2021. So make sure you guys hit that like and just let us know. All right, let's get into the main event here. We got Geoff Neal coming in at -120 against Wonderboy Thompson at +100. This line has pretty much stayed the same throughout, at least since this line has dropped. The line did drop, Stephen Thompson at -170. He has come down to now a slight underdog. The over-under is set at 4.5. The under being -155. We're seeing a lot of love start to come in for that now. Now, my take on this fight, honestly, it reminds me of Holly Holm against Irene Aldana, where you have a tested veteran who has been going out there and proving that they can beat up-and-comers. And then you have this up-and-comer that just looks like they're absolutely amazing. Aldana deaded Ketlin Vera before she took this fight with Holly Holm. Then she goes out there and just technically gets beat, absolutely beat. And now with Stephen Thompson, I feel like this guy still has it. He's 37, 38 years old. He's getting up there in years. But the last time we saw him out there against Vicente Luque, who a lot of people were like, okay, this is the guy to finally, close the chapter on Wonderboy. Wonderboy goes out there and probably has one of his best performances ever. He knocks down Luque numerous times in that fight. Looks absolutely on point. His chin looked great. Obviously there was skepticism after the Anthony Pettis fight, but that was one of those punches that you just absolutely do not see coming. A Superman punch jumping off the cage. You don't really see that type of shit coming. And it was near the ending of the round. I think Wonderboy Thompson was just more so thinking, okay, this round's almost over. Let's get this exchange done with. Bang, I'm done with, right? But he ate some good shots from Pettis earlier in that fight. He ate some great shots from Vicente Luque in his fight too, and was able to go out there and dominate him for 15 minutes. Now here against Geoff Neal, you see him, the one fight that I like to pull up, and I know it's about 3 years ago or 2 years ago, is the Kevin Holland fight, where he shows a lot of issues dealing with guys that use kicks a lot, use range a lot, and when he's not really able to get in there and get his hands going or his boxing going, he has some trouble. And that Kevin Holland fight really the only detriment on his record as of late. But most of his success in the UFC comes against guys that are willing to trade in the pocket with him, that are able to go out there and just Mike Perry. The guy's going to want to say that his dick is bigger, so he's going to go out there and try to outsling Geoff Neal, who's technically much more sound, much better, and showed it in that fight. Showed a great head kick in that fight too. But I think most of Geoff Neal's fights surround his boxing. He throws a kick here and there, but the majority of his strikes do come from his hands. And I feel like that's a tailor-made matchup for Wonderboy here. He's going to see those punches coming. He's going to do a good job of keeping the distance. Yeah, we're in the slightly smaller cage in the Apex, but again, I don't think that's going to be a huge detriment here to Wonderboy Thompson, who's just such a vet when it comes to these types of fights. Personally, I think that Vicente Luque was a little bit more difficult of a fight for him, as he had a little bit more arsenal tools in his back pocket with leg kicks and his Muay Thai and all that type of stuff. Whereas Geoff Neal, I feel like he's a little bit more limited when it comes to just using his hand, and he has a head kick here and there. But this is going to be the toughest test he's fought to date. And if he's not able to get that finish in that first or second round, you're not telling me that he's going to go out there and win a decision against Wonderboy. That's not going to happen. I think that Wonderboy is going to start to pick up in the third, fourth, fourth and fifth round, and we could potentially see a late finish for Wonderboy here. Because personally, I feel like that Geoff Neal has possible cardio issues. We saw it in the Kevin Holland fight. We saw it a little bit in the Belal Muhammad fight, which was why Belal was the one kind of moving forward the entire time in that third round. Yeah, he got clipped a couple times. He still threw some good combinations. But tell me how you're going to hit those combinations against Wonderboy Thompson later in this fight when he's doing his karate thing and getting in and out of distance. So as long as Wonderboy Thompson's chin isn't completely shot, which I don't believe it is, I think it's still there. I think he can kind of take whatever Geoff Neal is bringing his way. We're not going to see a grapple-heavy approach from Geoff Neal either. That's something that we've never really seen from him in the past. And even if you do, Wonderboy Thompson does a really damn good job of staying on his feet or even get back to his feet if he gets taken down. So I think this is a solid spot for Stephen Thompson. I said it from the top of this breakdown. I feel like it's a Holly Holm at NA Aldana kind of another scenario here where we see the vet go out there and outpoint the young up-and-comer, but potentially live for a late finish here because we've seen Wonderboy go 5 rounds before in the past. His cardio doesn't look horrible. It seems like he can still go out there and do his cardio thing or his karate thing, I should say. And I feel like a round 5 finish here for Thompson are very live. So round 4, we got plus 1,500, and round 5, we got plus 2,600. Even if you want to take him straight by KO, we got Thompson at plus 245, even if it comes earlier. So I like Wonderboy here. I think he finishes Geoff Neal. As long as he's able to survive, I'd say a round and a half. I'll give Geoff Neal about a round and a half to finish Wonderboy. Otherwise, he's not winning a decision here.
Okay, so first and foremost, I would like to touch on the point that Mike Perry believes he's got a bigger dick than Geoff Neal. I can almost guarantee you he does not. Beyond that, yeah, Geoff Neal's got that big power. One has to wonder, he wasn't just like sick with COVID. He wasn't just like, oh, I got a nagging injury. He was like in a hospital bed, near the end, apparently almost died from like a bacteria infection in his intestine. So what kind of shape is he in? I don't know. What kind of cardio is he going to have? I don't know. Again, you go back to the Kevin Holland fight. That's his last loss. He gets massively tired in the third round and, eventually gets TKO in the third. As far as his UFC run goes, it's been a lot of quick finishes. But you go back to that Belal Muhammad fight, he does not have cardio issues there. In fact, that third round, he thrashes Belal Muhammad and probably scores a 10-8 round. None of the judges gave him a 10-8 round, but sometimes they're loose and liberal with it. It is what it is. But Geoff Neal's cardio, if he's at his best, could be good. His power, we all know it's big time. But it's like we were talking about Jose Aldo versus Chito Vera. It's like there are levels to this. And on one hand, you've got Geoff Neal, whose career biggest win was, I guess, over Nico Price. But he beat Nico Price. He beat Mike Perry. He beat Belal Muhammad. Does he have anything like more than that? Is he have anything more notable than that? Because I'll tell you something. Mike Perry versus Stephen Thompson. Oh man, I'd love to see it. Because it would just be like a bull versus a matador. Stephen Thompson would move out of the way and hit this guy at will. Nico Price versus Stephen Thompson, I just don't think he'd be able to track him, right? Like Stephen Thompson fighting that level would look very good as well. Stephen Thompson fighting the champion and the top contender and a top 3, top 5 guy, maybe then he looks a little bit off. The Vicente Luque fight his last time out, I was actually on Team Thompson. I'm normally a Vicente Luque guy, but again, when you look at Vicente Luque, sharp and technical, but likes to stand flat-footed right in front of you and throw. And that style will never work against the likes of a Stephen Thompson because that karate base, the same thing with Raymond Daniels, same thing with what MVP wants to fight like. Those guys that are just, a prime Lyoto Machida from back in the day, you got to come forward on them. And if you do, they're just going to piece you up. They're faster, they're sharper, they're more technical, they see it coming, and they're able to just style on you. Where these guys have been struggling is if you don't come forward. If you decide to counterpunch and you wait back, it forces them to leave the dance and for them to come forward, and they're not nearly as successful. And to that extent, when you look at Stephen Thompson's both fights against Tyron Woodley refuses to engage him. He just stands there. So Thompson inches closer, and then Woodley bombs him. Hurts him bad in the first fight. Hurts him to a lesser extent in the second fight. But all the same, he just waited, and that opportunity presented itself. The Darren Till fight. Wow, talk about a bad fight. Darren Till does not throw anything. He just quite simply stands there. Stephen Thompson eventually comes in. Till blasts him with a straight left hand and drops him. They don't yield knockouts, but now he's been dropped 3 times. The Anthony Pettis fight. Anthony Pettis is going into full-blown coward mode at this point. Duke's like, hey, bud, don't worry. I'm just waiting for the over to hit, and then I'll toss the towel in for you. He's just backing up, but it causes Stephen Thompson to have to chase him and go forward. And the guy backs up so far, he presses off against the cage and Superman punches him and knocks him out. So you see, this is the problem with Stephen Thompson. If you stand there, he's going to have to do something. And when he tries to be the aggressor, he leaves that opening for the counterpunch, and he'll get hit. He's 37, as you mentioned. He's a reflex-based fighter. So fighting based on reflexes and your ability to jump out of that pocket, it gets harder over time. And that's why I keep saying a prime Lyoto Machida. Because what happened to Machida afterwards, when guys weren't bum rushing him, now he's all of a sudden, you can hit the guy, you can hurt the guy. And with Thompson, we've seen him drop 4 times, and then we have seen him knocked out by a 155er. So there's a part of me that's like, Geoff Neal's got way more power than Anthony Pettis. He does have more power than Tyron Woodley, in my personal opinion. He does have more power than Darren Till, but he's not nearly as clean. And maybe it's the clean shots that's dropping Stephen Thompson. Or maybe it's just that, he's not chinny, but like if you hit him, you can hurt him. And Neal's not the kind of guy that you want to get hit by. I wanted overs in this fight because I agree with you. Stephen Thompson's going to be quicker, at least early. He's going to dance around him. But it's not like Stephen Thompson never gets knocked out early, right? It's always later. Both Woodley fights, he's getting dropped later. The Darren Till fight, I think he dropped in the 4th. They don't materialize as quick. But the overs in this fight are garbage, man. Over 1.5, 238. I don't want that. The over 2.5, I like that better. It's minus 132. The over 3.5 is plus 104. So now we got to be banking rounds. But I hear what you're saying. If Stephen Thompson gets him to late waters, he's able to maybe TKO him late. I would say Stephen Thompson plays this one the safe route. And if he does get him into deep waters, he's just end up going to win a decision. And for that price tag, it'd be Stephen Thompson plus 330. If you go with Geoff Neal, that's where you get a little more risky because you can go with those Geoff Neals. A third round wins in round 4 is plus 1,300. Wins in round 5 is plus 1,800. Win in round 3 is plus 1,000. If he catches him even a win in round 2 is plus 800. But I would think if he is going to catch him, he's going to catch him maybe 3, 4, or 5. And those are all big price tags. So this main event is competitive in my opinion because both guys got a path to victory. Stephen Thompson is the classier fighter. He's the faster fighter. He's the more technical fighter. He did not spend a month in a hospital bed dying. He's been training the entire time. But this is the fight game, baby. And it's like, the fight gods don't give a shit about that stuff. Like, who's going to win is the better man on that night. And Geoff Neal, they call him Hands of Steel Neal for a reason. Like, he packs a tremendous amount of power. And, the narrative, again, JDS is on his way out, and I truthfully believe a Pettis is on his way out, and OSP's on his way out, and Shogun's on his way out. And guys like Aldo and guys like Stephen Thompson, they're not necessarily on their way out, but it's like there's a reason why these guys are kind of all sliding. It's like it's the fight game. It's so unruling. I'm not the biggest football guy, but one thing I've noticed from football is the best running back in the league. He's only ever like the best running back in the league for like 2-3 seasons. Wow. And then it's not like he's the 3rd best running back in the league. No, you never heard of him ever again. He's cut. He's released. He never plays again. It's like, how does that happen? But it's a bang-up crash, really tough job, and all the best guys in the world are fighting for the same roster spots. Well, that's the fight game, right? You take a lot of damage. You go through a lot of surgeries. It's the hurt game. It's the loneliest sport in the world. You sacrifice your time with your friends. You sacrifice your time with your family. You have no relationship with your kids. I should say no relationship, but your life is just like, if you want to be the best at something, then you have to have a narrow-minded focus on one task, right? And that's why these younger guys are able to do it because their life hasn't really kicked in yet. These older guys, they made money, they have families, they sign some autographs, they teach some seminars, their shoulder hurts, their hip hurts. If you're a Cub Swanson, you don't know anything else but this. And you will last a little longer. But you got to wonder with the Stephen Thompsons, he owns upstate karate with his father. He has money. He's fought in great spots. In my opinion, I thought he won the Woodley fight the second time. That would have made him a UFC champion. He's had an excellent run. And he's very capable of winning this fight. If he does, I like that by decision plus 330. But the writing is also somewhat on the wall for a guy turning 38 in 2 months. And Geoff Neal is like a bad dude to be locked in the cage with for 25 minutes if he doesn't gas out. So if Neal's in shape, he's a problem because of the variables of him being off for a year and him being very sick and all that. Like, you can't bank on him being in shape. It would be slightly for me towards Wonder Boy. But boy, oh boy, I'll tell you, this is a close competitive fight. It should shake out to be a fun one.
I can't wait to see it. And one thing I do want to say about it in terms of the age, I always harp on the fact that the last thing to go with these fighters is their power. But for Wonderboy, he's looking to keep those reflexes, to keep that speed, to keep his agility on his feet. So this might be the fight where it kind of disappears on him. We don't know, but I kind of do like him at those plus odds. And I might have a little bit of a sprinkle on the round 4 and round 5 prop there. All right, let's get into our best bets here so we can get the show on the road. Let me share my screen real quick. There we go. Bang. All right, let's get this going. All right, I'll start things off. My first one, I got Antonio Hoyo via KO over Deron Win. I think he's very live to get a finish here. Plus 455. I really like those odds. Again, I expect Deron Win to get him down early, but after that, I think he's going to have he's going to struggle in terms of continuously getting him down, and not just getting him down, but also holding him down. So I like Hoyo here at plus 455 via KO. Next one, I got Aldo via KO as well at plus 555. I think I'm not sure that I know Vera hasn't been finished by punches before, but I don't think he's faced a guy like Jose Aldo before either. So I think that all those combinations, his body work and his leg kicks, are going to allow him to open up for a finish probably in the first or second round. So I do like Aldo here, especially by plus 555 via KO. And then lastly, we just touched on it, I like Wonderboy Thompson in round 4 or round 5, plus 1,500 and plus 2,600 respectively. I love those spots here. Again, I still think that Neal will show a little bit of cardio issues here against a highly tested guy like Wonderboy Thompson, who has been to the 5th round a couple times before. And Geoff Neal is going to get very, very frustrated trying to find that chin of Wonderboy Thompson. So I think that's really going to cut into his cardio as well too. So yeah, there's some nice long shot props on my end. Let's get over to Cody's side. Cody, what do you got?
Yeah. So obviously, kicking things off, we're going to go with Hardy versus Tybura over 1.5 minus 160. As you guys know by now, I played a little bit of the safer route. Hardy does have that power. They're both heavyweights. Don't get me wrong. With Tybura, he's shown more restraint. He's going to the decision. Last 3 fights have gone the distance. With Hardy, fights a better game plan, likes to hang back a little bit. The over 1.5 at the very least. 2 big heavyweights. We see that slower down pace sometimes. I like that over 1.5. Going the second one, getting a little more risque. We're going to go with the winner Arroyo, goes to decision, minus 110. So hopefully to not conflict with my boy MMA Log of the Night, like a Arroyo 3rd round finish or something would be cool. Anything after 2.5 of that second round, I'd be okay with. But honestly, Win is just proven to be a decision machine. His early fights are by knockout. They're all opponents that have like 4-7, 4-8 records. So don't take any note of that. I think that Arroyo should be able to last. And then as far as Arroyo taking out Deron Win, just keep this in mind really quick, right? So the fight, Deron Win had a fight booked with Antonio Braga Nito. You call up Arroyo short notice and you offer him the fight, and he must have been the one that was like, well, would you take 195? Every other short notice replacement, and we've seen guys like Justin James take it on a day's notice. We've seen guys taking fights on 2-3 days notice. Nobody's been asking for catch weights. Arroyo asked for a catch weight. Deron Win's obviously down with it. But that would suggest he's not in great shape. Like he wasn't getting ready for something and was staying close to 185 in case he needed to make it. He openly would have said, I can't make 85 because it's short notice. Give me 195. And so for that reason, slower pace, fight goes the distance. Even if he wins on a tired on win, doesn't put him away. Give me that minus 110. And then, hey, got to have 1+ money. And I'm fading Anthony Pettis. Everybody knew it was coming. We're going to go with Alex Morono by decision plus 345. Honestly, I just think that his pace, stay in the pocket, just keep moving. If we can get takedowns, perfect. If we can establish top control, perfect. But if we can't do any of that, we need to just keep in the pocket, keep moving forward, and just outpoint this guy. He's got the volume. He's got the aggression. He seems to have a decent enough gas tank. And the last thing I want to throw on there, and that we didn't talk about early in the show, is that I have heard a couple people mention, man, you got Morono, and I talk about this all the time, but Morono is a brawler, and he's wild, and he's open, and he's hittable, and he's moving straight forward. And Anthony Pettis is a technician, and he's sharp, and he's accurate. He's going to intercept this guy, and he is going to knock him out. We've seen Morono been chinny in the past. Okay. Well, we did talk about Khaos Williams and Nico Price being absolute thrashers, having that power. But here's an interesting note on Anthony Pettis. He's fighting at 170, where outside of that win over Stephen Thompson, he hasn't looked particularly good. But outside of that knockout victory, he hadn't knocked out anybody in 8 years. He body kicked Donald Cerrone once upon a time, but not since he knocked out Joe Lozon in Japan in 2012 with a head kick. Has he knocked anybody? He doesn't have powerful hands. He's got some decent kicks. He's got a Superman punch over Thompson. It's a crazy moment. I don't think the power is there. And so turning off Morono's light switch is going to be a lot more difficult than I think a lot of people think. And I just think Morono is going to move him down. And then shout out to Gold Caps. He actually made a good point I forgot to bring up as well. But Pettis had an interview recently where he talked about 2021. He's focusing back on 55, making a run at 55. Like, that's not inspiring for you to be like, I'm going back to 55. I'm going to make a run. It's like, well, why are you taking this fight at 170? But I'll tell you why he is. Because it's Alex Morono, right? I can beat Alex Morono. I'm not totally shot to bits. I can beat Alex Morono, right?
Yeah.
Right, Duke? I can beat Alex Morono, can't
Help
you?
me.
And then Duke's like, Yeah, I don't even have a white flag anywhere around here. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm obviously being really harsh and probably borderline disrespectful to Anthony Pettis. And, it's all for fun and games. But him and Tyron Woodley are my least favorite fighters. So I ain't betting on either of them anytime soon. If you want to give me dog money to fade them, I got to do it.
See, the difference with Pettis and Price and Khaos is that Khaos and Price can land a shot anywhere on a person's head and knock them out. Pettis needs timing, precision, and just perfect pinpoint accuracy with landing on the chin or landing like that perfect shot. And it's going to be a lot harder than I think a lot of people are talking about here. So, yeah, I don't mind that plus 345 Morono via decision. I think at least one of us is going to get at least two hits here. We'll recap it, or well, I guess we gotta wait till 2021 to recap it for the next episode. But yeah, I like those props there. I'll give you guys a quick little glimpse at it one more time here before we get out. But yeah, some solid spots on both sides for us. Bummed that it's the last card of the year. We do also still have our final win stream, which is tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you guys join me, Cody Saftik, MMA Prediction Guru, and Just Bleed as we go over our last and final thoughts for the card after we finally see these guys step on the scale. There's a ton of guys that we went over on this card that we need to see on the scale to finally make a proper prediction and give our proper take on this card as well too. So yeah, I can't believe we're finally about to hit a 3-week stretch where we have no UFCs, but hopefully you savages can stay sane. You guys can keep it together, maybe go on Fight Pass, have a trip down memory lane, go back, watch UFC 139 or something like that, have some fun and enjoy yourselves. All right. If you haven't already, make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe below. Support the Odds Crew. You guys are doing big things for us. If it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't be able to do this. Cody, I'll give you the floor now as well in case you want to plug anything on the way out here.
Yeah, it's sad because it's the last show of the year, but it's also like the last show for like a 3-week stretch. So on one hand, I think everybody kind of needs that little lapse to recharge the batteries and just get focused on things. I mean, the UFC's had so many moving parts. It's been a crazy year. 3 weeks would be nice. On the other hand, it's like I was telling you, it's like we're made for this, man. This is what we love. We see spots every week. It could be a good card, it could be a bad card. I mean, they could give you a 5-fight card, like a contender series. You can always find value. You can always find places to make money. We love doing this. We love profiting. We love making money, but we also love just spending some time with the fans, getting their perspective, talking with people, entertaining for the most part. So honestly, it's been like a big year. I know it's been a challenging year for a lot of people, but honestly, in terms of the viewership and the support, it's been astronomical. I would like to just say thank you to everybody. If you are tuning in tomorrow for the post-weigh-in show, it's going to be interesting because there's a lot of guys on this card. I'm not sure if they're making weight. And also, with COVID, we could have a couple late cancellations and maybe a replacement opponent here or there. So always good to keep on things. And I know a couple of people are asking for parlays. So tune in tomorrow. You'll have the official last say picks. And then, yeah, I'll tweet something out on Saturday at CJ Saftik on Twitter. If you want to hit me up with anything, feel free. Once again, I really do appreciate you guys taking the time. So thanks and good luck to everybody this weekend.
I do want to quickly address this from my guy, Evan Kroll. Cody, what hat are you wearing? He's been asking me this whole time. What's the hat that you're wearing right now?
Okay, so it's a Pepsi North American Cup, right? See that?
Okay, there we go.
Right, and so basically it's like this $1 million horse race. So I own horses. We love racing horses, kind of like a family thing. Me and my girlfriend actually recently just purchased 2 horses. One's racing tomorrow, one's qualifying tomorrow.
Good luck.
The Pepsi North American Cup is like this $1 million race. It's just written for 3-year-old boys. And yeah, it goes for $1 million. So my dad finished second in it one time. That was like his big claim to fame in that race. But it's like a big thing. So this year for the Pepsi North American Cup, because it was all COVID, right? They're like, tweet us something and you can win this prize pack. So my girlfriend's like, I tweeted to win this like home prize pack thing. You can't go to the races to watch the big race. They're encouraging you to do it at home. And this is back when the limit was 10 people, right? So it was assumed that you're having a party for 10 people. So they send her this box and there's 10 of everything in the box, right? There's 10 hats, there's 10 shirts, there's 10 cups, there's 10 of everything. And the thing was like, you won. They're like, oh yeah, like take a picture of your party and send it back. A party, right? So anyways, I got a pile of this stuff. So I'm running around all the time. You guys all know I wear hats all the time. So yeah, it was just the one that was readily available. So shout out, no crazy secret. Pepsi North America Cup right there, 20 2020,
There you
a year to remember.
If you guys want to find out more about Cody's horse racing background, we actually talk about it on the podcast that I did with him on Combative Stories, where I had him in studio, had a couple brews, had a couple drinks, had some fun. So make sure you guys go check that out as well. That was very, very fun. All right. On the back end for myself as well, you guys can follow me at MMALOTN on Twitter, on YouTube as well. My podcast normally drops every Monday of fight week. Obviously, you're going to have to wait till January now for the next one, but that's where you guys can find me. And tomorrow is where you can find me and Cody as well with Just Bleed and MMA Prediction Guru at 9 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you guys join us for that. That's always a lively crowd. We always have like 700, 800 people in that live chat. So it's definitely a rowdy crowd that we try to keep a cap on a little bit. You guys get a little bit too crazy in there. We got to put a little bit of a crap on you guys every now and then. So shout out to everybody on the on this live viewing chat. You guys are awesome. Make sure you guys hit like and subscribe below as well too. And we'll see you guys tomorrow evening for the final weigh-in show. We'll see you guys then.